Welcome back, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects and Go Cloud Careers. And I'm excited to be back with you for day 5 of our free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate Bootcamp. And this is a complete free AWS full course to help you get your AWS Certified Solution Architect or your SAP-CO2. It's been lots of fun working with you guys all week. Today is day 5 of the course. Before we begin, I want to let you know of some free things that we're doing to help you all build your cloud architect career, your solution architect career, your enterprise architect career. And all this training is to get you cloud hired. So you can get that cloud architect job or solution architect job or enterprise architect job. And it's not about just getting certified, because anybody can just pass a test of questions and answers. But I want you to learn the cloud. I want you to understand how it works, why it works, so you can be way above your peers. So when you go on that cloud architect interview or that solution architect interview, people are going to look at you as someone that knows something. So that's why we're here. And it's an honor to be here with you again for this free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate 2022 Bootcamp. Okay, before we begin, let's talk about a couple of free things to make sure that you get started taking advantage of this great month of all the things that we're doing for you. This month, we have the following things on order. We have a completely free, brand new AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional ebook. The link to that book is in the description below. And of course, one of the blue wrenches from my team will pop that in the chat box. After we tell you about the book, I want you to all sign up for the completely free Cisco Certified Network Associate Bootcamp. We're going to do that in the end of the month, and this is going to be a solid boot camp. Did you know the cloud is nothing more than a network and a data center that's been virtualized? And one of the hardest challenges for future cloud architects or solution architects is lack of knowledge on the network. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The Cisco Certified Network Associate, which is the most basic intro to networking from the Cisco side, is relatively deep compared to some of these cloud certifications. And when we run the CCNA bootcamp, that's going to take us 2 weeks. So we're going to give you 2 weeks of free live training, because I want you to understand the network. Because if you understand the network, you're on your way to understanding the cloud, because the cloud is nothing more than a network and a data center that's been virtualized. So please sign up for the free CCNA bootcamp. It's going to be a lot of fun. I was one of the original Cisco certified internet experts. In fact, if I tell you that my CCIE number is 7417, you know how old I really am. But I love networking. I love the cloud, and I want to help you all get cloud hired. That's why we're here, to get you cloud hired. Anybody can get you cloud certified, but we focus on getting you cloud hired. So now that we talked about the book, let's talk about the free practice interview session that we're doing next week. We have a completely free interview coaching session where we'll interview some people live and we'll coach them. First, you'll get to see how they do, and you'll see what your competition is. In the art of war, they say if you want to win, know yourself, know your enemy, and you'll always be victorious. And when you get to see people from the community and how they think, you'll know what your competition is. So you know how to become better. And the point is, those that are going to be there are going to get extra guidance, and they're going to be coached. So on their next cloud architect or solution architect interview, chances are they're going to be advantaged over everybody else. So sign up, participate, or watch if you're a little afraid to participate, but get yourself cloud hired, CAD hired, and become a great cloud architect. So that's the interview coaching session. Next week, we're going to do a completely free, 100% free architecture session where we're going to invite you and we'll present a scenario. You'll get to ask questions and design an architecture just like a real cloud architect. Sometimes we call it a cloud architect experience webinar or a cloud architect challenge, but it's lots of fun. We typically run them. People come from all around the world, and they see if they have what it takes to work as a cloud architect. And if not, they know exactly the skills that are missing, so they can get cloud hired on the next cloud architect interview or solutions architect interview. So there's that. So after we talked about that, let's talk about the last free thing that we're doing. Chris, what's that last one we're doing this month?
Subnetting workshop.
We have a free subnetting workshop. Before the CCNA bootcamp, we started going into subnets, and lots of you guys said you needed help. And IP subnetting and supernetting and routing and route summarization is so critical, because if the IP addressing plan is wrong, everything will break. And I don't want anything to break on our cloud architectures. I've spent 25 years cleaning up bad things because people didn't know IP addressing and IP addressing scheme. And you know what? That's not going to happen to you guys. You're going to be great because we care and we love you and we're working with you. So we're going to get back to the content now. But before we get started, if you can all give me a cloud architect and a cloud hired, I know you're here. I'm excited and we'll begin. But if you can please show me that cloud architect and that cloud hired, and heck, if you're here and you want to subscribe and hit the bell, we'd love that. Wow, greetings. I'm looking at some of you guys. I'm ready for day 5 too, Leo. I love this tech. Mervin, cloud hired, fantastic. Russ, DJ, good morning. Live Harmony, hooray, cloud hired. Pierre, hello everyone. Pierre, we will catch up. Mervin, cloud hired. Live Harmony, fantastic. Abigail Marks, I like all your happy little things there. Yes, Jamal, it's so good to see you. Cecilia, cloud hired, I love that. Free and good quality, can't ask for anything better than that. Chow, thank you so much. Mario Million, good to see you. Cloud hired. Bonaventure Living, cat hired. Yes, my cat Cindy. She does have a great job around here. She's always been cat hired. Cat architect, yes. My cat Cindy is the genius architect. She's great at unplugging cables, Ethernet cables, power cables, powering off servers with these cute paws. Z cloud architect, I'm loving it. Cloud security architect is also good, but you're also a cloud architect first there, Ding. You're both. Shazaya, fantastic. VNHG, let's go, cloud architects. Marla, cloud hired, and Chow, cloud architect. I'm loving it. Pierre, fantastic. Charles Simpson, wonderful. Marjan, wonderful. Eva Doikia, I love that, including the cat, because we love our Cindy around here. Mario, fantastic. And Nick Love and Leo, fantastic. Mr. Gee, I wonder if you like the cooking gi or if you're a jiu-jitsu guy. Because I've done a fair amount of jiu-jitsu, mostly no-gi jiu-jitsu because it's more of the world that I'm from, but I've done some gi jiu-jitsu too and loved every last minute of it. Okay, it's so exciting to see you all piling in. I'm loving this. This is a way to spend a Saturday working on cloud computing, getting better. I feel that we should get better every day, so let's do it. Let's get into today. And then today we're going to begin by talking about streaming data. Now, when we talk about streaming data, we're really talking about helping an organization make better business decisions. That's the whole point. Organizations have data. And when we start talking about big data, and whether it's streaming data with a kinesis type service, or whether it's the creation of data lakes, or the creation of big databases, the whole point of collecting data is so the business can make better business decisions. If we raise the price by $1, what does that do to sales? If we add a flash sale, what does that do to sales? If we show an image of a person wearing a green shirt, does that raise sales? And that's why organizations are collecting data, so they can maximize the return on investment of everything they do. So organizations are collecting data. Now, before we get into kinesis is about streaming data. Now, kinesis is a great service, but what is kinesis? An Amazon proprietary service, which means kinesis only works on Amazon. Which means if you're a multi-cloud architect, you probably can't use kinesis, because here's why. It doesn't work on Google, Azure, or any other cloud like the Nutanix cloud or the OpenStack cloud. So if you're going to use kinesis, again, prepare yourself to be locked into AWS. So normally an organization might use Kafka, and they can use Kafka and AWS, Kafka in Google, Kafka in Azure, Kafka and Nutanix, and all that AWS proprietary nonsense is gone. We've got a solid, rock solid multi-cloud architecture, but we're still talking about AWS, and some organizations only use one cloud. And if you work at AWS, they're going to want you to talk about AWS stuff, because when you use AWS stuff and proprietary services, it's hard to leave. So of course, Azure and Google are all going to want to use their things. But as a cloud architect, you have to say, what is in the best interest of my customer? And it's usually nothing vendor proprietary. But Kinesis is a great service, and it is the proprietary version equivalent of Apache Kafka, which is used pretty much by everybody. But let's talk about Kinesis because it's on your exam. especially the certified solution architect professional. And you need to know as a good cloud architect or a solution architect, meaning the cloud architect works on all clouds and the solution architect only knows one. So well, it's better to be a cloud architect than a solution architect, because a cloud architect can work as a solution architect, but a solution architect does not have the knowledge to be a cloud architect. So be a great cloud architect and learn things. And that's why every time we talk about things, we talk about cloud formation, not that we do that as architects and DevOps engineers do. We'll talk about why you should use Terraform instead, et cetera, because we're always going to show you how to make sure your systems work everywhere. Why are we going to the cloud in the first place? Business agility and scalability. We lose all that agility the second we go to a vendor proprietary service. And now we don't have the agility to move. And that traps and handcuffs our customers. So it's up to you as the cloud architect. Do you define vendor proprietary? You do open standards. I do open standards. But we are here and we're going to talk about kinesis. So what is kinesis? Kinesis is an AWS service for collecting, processing, and analyzing streaming data. Kinesis can collect and analyze the data in real time. So the data comes in, you analyze it. I mean, seriously, this is really good. Now, you can do the same with Kafka, but think about this. Getting information and making better decisions in real time compared to this, collecting information for years, looking at it 5 years later, and then making decisions. Being able to make decisions in real time, aided by decision support tools based upon real-time information. So market factors change, supply and demand curves change, the capital that's free flowing, the money in the system changes with regards to interest rates and bond purchases, etc. And all of that changes customer buying patterns. So as an architect with good business acumen, you can see how all these things would come in, and you could see how interest rates going up by 0.25%, government intervention, a new law, how it can change everything. And with Kinesis, you can spot it in real time long before the news media does it, so you can make better business decisions in real time. So that's what it's about. So Kinesis collects your streaming data. Now, Kinesis can collect streaming data in a few places: audio, video, application logs, website click streams, and of course, Internet of Things devices. So all this stuff is constant data. Imagine weather sensors from all over the world streaming in the temperature. Imagine biomedical devices that are processing an EKG, normal sinus, normal sinus, normal sinus, normal sinus, AFib, asystole. You want a notification, hopefully not asystole, because that would be flatline. But the point is, the streaming data can come in, and we can use it for alerting, for analysis. It's extremely good. So whether it's Kafka or Kinesis, this is fantastic for your customers. Now, I prefer Kafka, but here's the point. That's what we're dealing with, streaming data. So this is exactly the opposite of collect and store your stuff for years and then go back and look at it. So be a great cloud architect. Advise your customers how to do this. Now, streaming data is predominantly a big data architect, not a cloud architect. But as a cloud architect, you're going to be responsible for this. And if you're like me, you're going to be calling your favorite big data architect and asking them to help you design the perfect Kafka or Kinesis solution. But you need to know this. It's very important, and especially on the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional exam, although you may see it on the Certified Solution Architect Associate exam, but you do need to know it for your career. That's why we're covering it. So when we're talking about Kinesis, we're really talking about 4 different platforms, if we're going to use the AWS one, in which case these are Kinesis Video Streams, Kinesis Data Streams, Kinesis Data Firehose, and Kinesis Data Analytics. So we'll talk about each one and what they actually are. Let's begin by talking about Kinesis Video Streams. Well, somewhat self-explanatory. Kinesis Video Streams collects video from multiple sources, and you basically enables the ingestion, storage of your and indexing of your systems. It enables the videos obtained by Kinesis to be sent for machine processing, machine learning. For example, it's going to look like this. Why would you want to process videos and things like that to look out on them? If you look at an environment like this, I've got video stream 1, 2, and 3. Maybe I want to take uncompressed video and run an H.264, H.265 codec to squish it down to a highly efficient MP4 file. I might want to do that. What if I want to identify things that are not supposed to be there? For example, I want to connect Kinesis stream or connect video stream information, and I want to look for something that's patently offensive. For example, I might be looking to make sure there's no religious symbols in anything that we do, because We don't want to put money, politics, or religion in anything that we do. So I make sure that we don't have any messages that could be dividing people in our Kinesis video streams. So we could be looking for that. We could look for something that's brand damaging. I've actually seen a video of somebody. They had some drug paraphernalia in the background, and it was someone working at a company that did this. Now, the company caught it before it was released, but that's the kind of stuff you can be looking for. So you always want to make sure that you can look and mine as much as you can, and that's what Kinesis video streams is for video. Now, there's another kind of Kinesis streams called Kinesis data streams, and this is a little different. This is really where it starts getting interesting. Kinesis data streams, think more like Kafka, is a scalable platform for collecting real-time streaming data. And what we're really talking about is something that's able to capture gigabytes per second from hundreds of thousands of sources. So data coming from everywhere. So whether it's financial transactions, location tracking, here's the point. You can ingest the data and you can send it directly to a business intelligence tool like Tableau. So that's what we're really talking about, is the ability to collect data. And that, you could do this with Apache Kafka or here. Now it can capture the data and send it to an analytics application within 70 milliseconds. So truthfully, that's really incredible. So here's what we're talking about. You've got your data stream, which would go into a Kinesis or Kafka, and then you can export that to a business intelligence tool like Power BI. And you can look at that Power BI tool and you can get real-time information and make decisions in real time. So this is really, really great. So I have to one day see if my good friend, big data architect, wants to do another big data architecture on YouTube, because this stuff is fascinating stuff. And organizations can use these kind of Kafka or Kinesis data streams to really make good decisions in real time. Better decisions can mean lots of money for your customers. So what do we do as cloud architects? We can transform our customers' businesses. So when we have those first couple of conversations with the executives and they tell you about their business goals, when we start hearing about the data sources we have, we start thinking about how we can help that customer. So we have to obviously have the business acumen to be able to get the information in the first place. Otherwise, we can't do our jobs at all. But if we have the business acumen, the communication skills, the leadership skills to get the right information, then we can use tools like this to help our businesses become much, much better and much more operationally efficient. And what business doesn't want to make more money and be more operationally efficient? So when we're talking about Kinesis data streams, we're going to talk about a couple of key concepts. The first key concept is the data producer. Now, a data producer is an application that's going to emit records to the Kinesis stream. So data producers, we basically assign a key to the record, and the partition keys ultimately determine which shard actually ingests it. So we'll talk about shards in a minute. Here's the thing. A data producer sends data. Now, Kinesis is the concept of a data consumer, and that's the AWS service that's responsible for receiving all of it. Like, I send the data. All my weather devices, all my biomedical devices send the data. The consumer consumes it and puts it where it needs to be. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Data consumers are receiving the most recent data, places in the shard. And because you're pulling in the data and it's recent data, what can you do with it? You can send it for analysis. Pretty great stuff. So let's talk about Amazon Kinesis data stream concept. The data stream is the data, but it's really a logical grouping of shards. So the data stream will be there for 24, that keeps the data for 24 hours by default, but you can store it for 365 days. And the last unit is something called the shard. You'll hear shard used in all kinds of different places. Think of it as a base unit of throughput. So producer sends the data, consumer pulls the data in, stream is the grouping of shards, and a shard is a throughput unit. So keep that in the back of your mind. So let's talk about some use cases. So large event data correlation. Could you imagine if you had a sporting event, and in the sporting event, everybody had like some kind of cool little thing where they could vote? Kinesis could be good for something like that. Of course, so could a NoSQL database if you have millions of people there, but you can do the real-time analytics with it, capturing data from mobile devices, capturing gaming data, There's so many uses of this kinesis and Kafka kind of thing to be able to collect data and do something about the data. It's truly business transformational when in the right hands of a good big data architect, as well as some data scientists that can interpret it and some people that can take that interpreted data and present it to the upper management. This stuff can be really helpful, really impactful, and can truly transform an organization. So it's great stuff here. Now let's talk about the next kinesis service, which is called Data Firehose. Now, when we talked about kinesis streams, it's basically streaming data, which we would probably send directly to a business intelligence tool like Power BI. But Kinesis Data Firehose is a little different. It's a service that'll take your streaming data and store it somewhere else, whether it be an analytics service, a data store, or a data lake. So Kinesis Data Firehose will capture data and put it in S3, Redshift, or another service. Now, Kinesis Firehose is a fully managed service. Again, you know how I feel about fully managed services. You have zero control over them. And they're fully managed and they're vendor proprietary, which means you can't go to another cloud. But it's fully managed and it's designed to match the throughput of your data at auto scales. You can monitoring it. So if you're looking for something that's pre-done for simplicity, when the cloud providers do it for you, it's simple. But when somebody does something for you, you lose control. You can't, so just keep that in the back of your mind. And it's for everything. Whenever you do something that's a pre-made service, you can't control your security the same way. You can't control your this the same way. You lose things. Now, is it worth it? Maybe the agility is worth it, but maybe it's not, dependent upon the use case. It's all based upon the customer's business requirements. So keep that in the back of your mind. Let's talk a little bit more about Kinesis Data Firehose. Exactly, your throughput is going to be based upon shards. Basically, think about it. A shard is about 1 megabit a second. Now, think about that is actually a lot of data when you're dealing with stream of data, when you're dealing with like 66-byte packets. So, you know, you're dealing with small little bits and pieces here at a time. A megabit per second is a lot, and you've got a bunch of shards. So you can collect a lot of data this way. So the pricing is going to be based on your number of shards. And realistically, before you start using a service like Kinesis Data Firehose, here's what you need to do. You need to figure out how many shards you really need. Anytime you actually know what you need and you can provision ahead of time, realistically speaking, you're better off. So you can create up to 10 shards per region per account by default. So 10 megabit per second per region. But if you need more, you just ask them and they'll give you more. And you can set up a policy to auto scale the number of shards. And you can set up Kinesis Firehose from the console. Really, it's not that hard to do. Like any of these things in the console, they're simple. You set up the source, the destination, and that's pretty much it. So let me show you what it looks like. Here, what we have is we've got our data stream going into S3, and we've got some analytics tools. I'm sure somewhere along the line, we're probably going to need to run some Python scripts on it or do some data massaging before we go into the business intelligence tools. There's lots of other ways we can do this. Again, this is a big data architect thing. Someone like a Praveen who's here has known more about this than others. They've done it for years, and they've helped organizations become extremely profitable through this good kind of data analysis. So that's what your big data architects are doing, but it's important that we understand it as well. Let's talk about some more key Firehose system information. Kinesis Data Firehose, the underlying entity is Kinesis Firehose. It creates something called a record, and a record is the data of interest that your data producers, the people that send data to the Kinesis Data Firehose delivery stream. And of course, a record can be about as big as a meg. And a data producer, we talked about it, a producer is the one that sends records to Kinesis delivery streams. So you could have a web server, for example, that's sending log data, which can be an example for that. And then you can play with the buffer size and buffer interval. Kinesis Data Firehose buffers incoming stream data to a certain size for a certain period of time before delivering it. Buffer size is in megabytes and buffer interval is in seconds. A little bit about Kinesis Data Analytics. That's another service. Kinesis Data Analytics is a managed service that will transform and analyze data in real time. So anything that's real time is phenomenal. Kinesis Data Analytics uses Apache Flink to process data streams. Kinesis Data Streams is auto-scaling, will meet the needs of an organization's things, and Kinesis Data Streams can be queried with SQL queries. Here's the thing. They're basically using an Apache tool, and then they're modifying it to do it. But you could just use the Apache tool. Out of the box, the Apache tools, and you can use them on 3 and 4 cloud providers, your data centers, and you don't have to deal with any of this. And you can use the same thing on all of them. And then it's not vendor proprietary, and you've given your customer the most interoperability. But here's the thing, still great. If you're doing with the Apache stuff or the vendor or the AWS stuff, the concept and the ability to do this is great. So think about it. You're capturing your data and you're sticking it somewhere, and then you're processing it somewhere. Now we're talking. So why don't we do this? Kinesis can be a bit of a challenging topic. And we've got some people who happen to either have blue wrenches that are actually in the audience right now, that if we get some Kinesis questions that are way beyond me, I know some people in that audience that are my students that are actually working cloud architects, but also big data architects. So let's see if there's any Kinesis questions. Chris, if you want to check and see if there's any questions coming in, and I know you've got lots going on in the background. So. Angelo, what is the importance of doing total cost of ownership analysis between self-hosted versus managed? Example, self-host means building auto-scaling maintenance, etc. while theirs in. It's critical. That company is going to do their own ROI model to determine what it is. What you're really going to have to do, Angelo, is it's not just a cost-by-cost basis, because I could buy 2 services for $1 million. But if $1 million service offers more business value, that's the one I'm going to go with. So, Angela, it's not about, hey, this pencil costs $1 million. It's about this pencil costs $1 million, but because the pencil can make me fly, and this pencil can make me sell more, and this pencil can make me more efficient, this pencil's worth $20 million to me. Whereas this other pencil writes pretty nicely, but it doesn't do a lot. So the total cost of ownership is critical, but it's not the total cost of ownership that matters as much as the ROI model. All organizations will look at the cost of a project and problem, and then they will determine the business value that's created by that solution. Now, you're going to have to help them determine that business value for the solution. So if I create a new chatbot, and the new chatbot saves my sales reps at an e-commerce site, and bumps my sales by 20% by not getting humans out of it, being faster and quicker, and 20% sales equals $10 million, and my solution costs $2 million, guess what? That customer would pay me $2 million all day, even if it only cost $1 million in the data center, because my solution is more agile, more business value. So you will always have to look at what the workflow of the employees are. You will always have to look for what's going on with regards to sales. You will always have to look at how the employees do their job. You'll have to look at the customer's costs. Where are they coming from? Are they supply chain problems? Are the employees too expensive? Are the employees not collaborating? Angela, did the minimum wage just go up? Or the company saying, hey, we got to remove employees, so how do we do more with less? Is there some new rule or regulation that's business unfriendly, where businesses say we have to lay off, we need automation? Or did some kind of intervention come in that gave businesses money and they're like, woohoo, we can spend. Let's expand in new markets by doing this, this, and this. So, Angela, it all starts with that. It all starts with what is the problem we're trying to solve. Then we develop a solution, and the solution may include tech. The solution may include process reengineering, workflow reengineering, could be anything. And only when we know the value of the whole solution, by doing the expected value calculations, meaning if it's 75% successful of $1 billion, we believe this will be worth $750 million. And if it costs less than $750 million, the company's going to want it. But the next thing, Angela, the company's going to cost is, well, if I spend $10 million with Mike and I gain $30 million return on investment capital, but I spend $10 million with Praveen over there in a big data project, and I get $100 million return on my investment capital, they're going to go with Praveen's solution versus mine, Angelo. So it's total cost of ownership, it's business value, it's the way that you're transforming the organization, it's the opportunity costs of investing things elsewhere, it's going to include their weighted average cost of capital, it's going to be this. And that's why we say, the certified solution architect profession is about 10% of what's necessary to be an architect, a cloud architect or solution architect. It's this other stuff that's, 70, that this business stuff is at least 50% of the job. And then there's other things which are as well. So it's critically important to do all of those things. And that's one of the things that separates the elite architects from the technical architects. And that's why the elite architects can earn 2 or 3 times what the technical architects can. It's that business acumen, that leadership, emotional intelligence, executive presence. Fantastic question, Angelo, and it's critical. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Mohammed, can you catch streaming from security devices like monitoring cameras? Yes, there is definitely a Kinesis video streams for Kinesis video monitoring. So sure you could. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Is cloud security covered in depth? Wasim, there is no AWS certification that covers any cloud security in depth. I would say the AWS Advanced Security is like an intro to an intro to an intro to junior level cloud security that's out there. But in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, every one of our students learns how to do military grade security. And that includes 7 or 8 or 10 layers of security in-depth coverage. So we cover it there. But, we need to put 30, 40 hours of security training to really teach somebody even to get an intro to security. And because we need to teach about the next generation firewalls and the IDS, IPS systems, the types of IAM, and realistically saying there's that. But we have covered some security so far. We talked about how to use next generation firewalls. We talked about access control lists. We talked about disabling unnecessary services on the hosts. We talked about where to use your AAA authentication and encryption. So we went in way yesterday, more security depth than you would even see covered in the AWS Advanced Security. But again, that's just basic security. It's not the kind of security I would expect in a cloud security architect that's got deep knowledge. But we spent a lot of time on security yesterday, and we showed you how to go past the native cloud native things that don't secure your system and kind of build that big enterprise security, where we talked about next generation firewalls, and we told you what IDS, IPS system did, and we gave you all the layers. So go back and see that. And by the way, that's far deeper than you'd get in an AWS Advanced Security. But on my mind, when I actually compare that to cloud security, it's still light, because we only had an hour to talk about it versus 30 or 40 hours just to go into cloud security. And reality is, if I really wanted to talk about cloud security in depth, Wasim, I would have to book a 9 to 5 for about 6 months straight, every single day, Monday through Friday. That's what it takes to really have deep knowledge of cloud security. So we can do as much as we can. We went into some deep cloud security architectural principles. But when I mean by depth, I'm a CCIE. It was 75,000 pages of reading that. So I define depth as that. And when I work with the $300,000 and $400,000 cloud security architects, they read their 75 to 100,000 pages of materials and they practiced it. So that's what I consider deep. But we definitely do a lot of security. We definitely teach a lot of security. And we covered more security yesterday than that's covered in the entire curriculum of the AWS Advanced Security. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that. Chris, do you want to bring in the next one? Can guard duty be used for threat with Kinesis, Mohammed? Sure, you can add it. But I wouldn't believe that that's even close to securing my systems without all the other layers of things that we talked about yesterday. That's kind of like one of those little added things, like when you get a whole home surge protector to your house, which the electric company charges you $5 a month for, but you still get surge protectors for your stuff inside your house and UPSs for your computers. I view it like that. It's one of those extra little checkoff things that you can say, heck, this helps. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Will I help you with a case study of business value in the next Wednesday meeting? Rajesh, that's exclusively for our students. The only way I can suggest getting that is to either get an MBA or join a program like ours, because that's where these things are covered. It takes me hundreds of hours with my students in the Cloud Architect Career Development Program to teach that. And it's not something we can do in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, or even 50 hours. It takes hundreds of hours to do this. But it's a great question, and I wish we could do it live and free. But that's why we have the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. You'll get a taste of what we do. You'll learn more in those 3 hours than you probably would in 6 months of studying on your own. And I really think you'll learn more about architecture in those 3 hours than you really will. Because what happened is I've had all these certified solution architect professionals come to my course when I do these things, just the free day, and they all call me up. Oh my God, they're like, I thought I knew this. Oh my God, I didn't even know what I didn't even know. Thank you. So we will teach you more about architecture in that meeting, but understand, I can't teach an MBA program in an hour. We spend 500 hours in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program for a reason. That's what it takes to go from certified to hired. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Which other service is similar to Kinesis? Every cloud provider has their own, but Apache Kafka is what most people would use. And here's the reason. It's vendor neutral. Works in your data center, your Nutanix cloud, your OpenStack cloud, your Azure cloud, your Cisco cloud, your Palo Alto cloud, the Dell cloud, the AWS cloud, the Azure cloud. So I have a perspective. If I go to AWS and I want to raise my rates or treat me poorly, I want to be able to pick up and be on Azure in 10 minutes. If that's my goal for all of my clients. I want them to be portable. I don't believe in being handcuffed. The people that should be handcuffed are the people that are criminals, not good businesses. So I don't believe in it. So I only use vendor neutral services for that reason. Nutanix cloud, beautiful. OpenStack cloud, beautiful. Okay, so let's get back into the content. Now, today we're talking a lot about vendor proprietary services. So, when we talk about vendor proprietary services, let's talk about what that means. So, we have two forms of computing on the cloud. Two. We have servers and we have containers. Of course, we've got that scary serverless idea, but once you do that, it's still running on a server somewhere. It's just hidden from you. And you lose control. You lose control of your security. You lose control in terms of visibility, what's going on. But but when you go serverless, there's nothing to worry about. It's much more agile. It's much more flexible. So like anything else, there's a time and a place for everything. Now, when we talk about containers, we're really talking about this. We're talking about taking things and compartmentalize them. So let's talk about what a container is. A virtual machine is this. You take a server, a bare metal server, you add a hypervisor, which manages the memory, and then basically you create virtual machine 1, virtual machine 2, virtual machine 3. And each virtual machine has its own operating system, its own software, its own dependencies. It's a beautiful environment. You take one server, chop it into a bunch, that's a virtual machine. Now, a container is a lot more like virtualizing an operating system. As if you took an operating system and you isolated different applications in their own little container environment. And by doing this, what happens in container 1 theoretically shouldn't happen in container 2, but not always. But the theory is if you've got 50 containers all in an Ubuntu system, container 1 crashes, guess what? All the rest of the containers are there. Now I'll tell you, here's the flaw in containers. If your operating system of your server crashes, guess what? All the containers go down. So it's a little less secure and it's much less robust than a virtual machines because there's limitations on the container. Very limited limitations on the container. So big stuff, servers, virtual machines, little stuff, containers. But microservices and containers are very exciting. So when you build containers, there's lots of ways to do it. In the data center, we run Kubernetes clusters. What is a Kubernetes cluster? You've got a couple of servers doing the control plane, and you've got little containers that run on your servers. And the orchestration thing, the control plane, determines where your containers are, and they work. And it is a beautiful, beautiful system. It is open standards. Red Hat calls it OpenStack. Everybody's using containers, and everybody's using Kubernetes worldwide. And it's the greatest, greatest, greatest way to do containers. It's industry standard. It works on AWS, Azure, Nutanix. You name a cloud like Dell, Oracle, Cisco, it's going to work. So if you want to help your customers and you want to design the best container strategy for your customers, I recommend you do something like Kubernetes. But now we're talking about AWS certification. So we're going to get into the most proprietary container management service you can possibly think of. Now, when you do this, remember it's AWS specific, and it means if you use this, you're going to have a hard time going to another organization. Now, it won't be terrible because it's a container, but realize proprietary management of your systems means you're stuck back to being handcuffed. You're a prisoner of your cloud provider. So when we talk about the Elastic Container Service, realize if you're only going to be on AWS and you're looking for simple and elegant, it's beautiful. But if you want to think about Azure, Oracle, or anything else, don't use this. Use Kubernetes. But let's talk about the Elastic Container Service, or ECS. We'll say the container is a more modern, lightweight version of a virtual machine because that virtual machine requires the entire copy of the operating system in each instance, but a container doesn't. The container actually borrows the libraries from the operating system. So realistically speaking, a container is pretty much just your application, its dependencies, and it's all packaged in this beautiful little thing, which means it requires much, much, much less memory. Much, much, much less memory, less CPU. So it's much lighter. So if you had a server that could handle 10 virtual machines, you could have a server that can have 100 containers on it. It's that efficient. So keep that in mind. Now, generally speaking, Windows servers can host Windows containers, and Linux servers host Linux containers. Now, if you're using a Windows server, Windows now supports the subsystem for Linux, which is effectively an Ubuntu Linux kernel. So now Windows systems can host Windows and Linux kernels. But, realize this, what we're talking about is as follows. Linux machines can't do Windows containers, but we're not, just keep that in the back of your mind. But Windows can do both. If you're using Windows things, I don't see a lot of Windows servers for anything other than Exchange and Active Directory. For big companies these days, small companies use Windows servers all the time because they're simple to manage and they're elegant. But big organizations are typically using Linux. So keep that in mind. So what's the Elastic Container Service going to look like? It's going to look like something like this. You've got your server. You've got your host operating system, you've got your containers. Now, realize this. This Elastic Compute Service is doing your orchestration, and your containers are done like anything else. So where do you put your containers? Well, you've got two options. You'll put your containers either in a virtual machine, ding, 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 vendor interoperable, or you can put your, but not with ECS, or you can put your containers on Fargate, which is hosted, managed container service for you, not vendor interoperable. So keep that in the back of your mind. So when we're dealing with the Elastic Container Service, we're dealing with a service that AWS considers to be 99.99% available, which is relatively high availability, not extreme availability for hospitals or banks, but good enough for most organizations. And what happens, you deploy it in your VPC and you use access control list to kind of filter your things out. And like I said, you can work it with, you can work it in any type of environment. You can put on a virtual machine or a container. So this is what it looks like when they show you how to use this. You've got your orchestration over here, and you build your containers. You put it on your EC2 instance. You provision your management. You make your containers, and then you pay for the server. Now, that's what you would do. Many people are going to use this with Fargate, and I'll show you why. If you're going to get involved in an AWS proprietary Elastic Container Service, you might as well lock yourself in and even a little more with Fargate because it's nice and it's simple. And what happens is if you're going to lock yourself in with any of these vendor proprietary service, you have this beautiful, very elegant, simple to use Elastic Container Management. And basically speaking, you just build your containers, you tell them how much you want, and you just pay for its utilization. So if you're the type that is not afraid of being locked into a single one, and you're looking for the simplest and most elegant solution, just use your proprietary Elastic Container Service along with your proprietary Fargate, and poof, you've got containers, they're up and they're efficient. But if you want to go to Azure or Google or anybody else, don't use this service or any of these things that we just talked about because you're going to be using Kubernetes, which is fully interoperable. So now let's talk about the Elastic Kubernetes Service. So here you go. Amazon has a fully managed, again, container management service. What does fully managed tell you? You lose control. So again, you're probably better, although you can get away with this in many cases, to run your own Kubernetes cluster and use that same cluster and do it interoperable across your organizations. And by that way, you have control over your Kubernetes clusters. You have control over the orchestration, and you can use that same control or similar things across clouds. But if you wanted to use a managed service, again, and remember, if you go managed, you lose control. Managed, you don't have to have the control, which makes it easier, but managed means you lose control. So if you wanted a fully managed Kubernetes service, you can use Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service, otherwise known as EKS. Now, the good news is, since it's a Kubernetes service and it's managed, you can move your containers to AWS without modification, which means it's not that hard to take them off and move them to somewhere else. It's very similar to ECS, but at least it's an open standard. Now it's a proprietary enhancement, meaning it's fully managed, which is a little different than if you just took your own virtual machines and 3 of them and set up your own Kubernetes orchestration system. But if you wanted a pre-managed, pre-done thing for you, this is excellent. And why is it excellent? It's using Kubernetes, which is vendor interoperable, so you can still get away with it in lots of places. Like the Elastic Compute Service, which I probably would never use because it's vendor proprietary, but this is at least Kubernetes, which is much more of an open standard. You can put your things on a virtual machine like I would, and by doing that, you have control over your containers, and you can just port those containers anywhere, anytime with a moment's notice, because you can just make a copy of that virtual machine and you can move it to a bigger server, smaller server. That's what I would do. But if you were in for that completely serverless, I don't want to know, I just want to set it and forget it and hope everything's great, well, then we could just use ECS with Fargate. And there's advantages to that too. So, I mean, realistically speaking, these are your two options. You could use your cluster, this to create your cluster, and you could stick your things on your virtual machines, or it's basically, you could just stick it in the server management product. But here's the thing, it's Kubernetes, and the fact that it's Kubernetes, now we're talking vendor neutral, vendor interoperable, and here's where you can really help your customers. Now let's talk about another service called Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk is a service that's designed for people that don't know a lot about cloud infrastructure. And guess what? If you don't know a lot about cloud infrastructure, you probably shouldn't touch the cloud, because you should know what you want to design, how it works, why to use it. But Amazon does have this concept, and it's very simple and elegant, and it's great for small businesses that aren't really exquisitely trained on network and data center concepts. And it's called AWS Elastic Beanstalk. And it's a service to kind of auto-provision deploy your web applications and services. Here's the thing. You upload your code, and Elastic Beanstalk is going to take that code and deploy your infrastructure, your load balancers, your EC2 instance, or virtual machines, your containers. So, it's kind of one of those things. So you put in your code and perfectly deploys your things for you. So if you think tech ever does anything perfectly on its own, you'd be sadly mistaken. So it does work. It's very helpful, very good for certain environments, but it's always better to know what you're doing and do it the way you want it than use anybody else or any semi-automated services. But it is very nice for the developing type that are not strong on networking or infrastructure, but have great development knowledge to be able to deploy something by just adding their code. So that's kind of cool. It really is. And for the right environment, this can be very good. It's just a matter of using the right service and the right environment at the right time. So Elastic Beanstalk provides the necessary tools for web development and applies them to the customer. So the theory is, when you start using these kind of like we've done it for you services, and that's why organizations love the cloud. We've done it for you, so you don't need to have as many competent people. You can focus on code development and not deploying your infrastructure. So this is realistically what we're talking about. We're talking about an environment to automate, to add simplicity. So with Elastic Beanstalk, people write their code in Go, Java, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Ruby, Python, that kind of thing. You upload their code and everything is just managed. And then it's monitored via CloudWatch, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what it looks like. You put your code in and then poof, automatically all this stuff is there and it's deployed on its own automatically. Let's talk about CloudWatch. It's the next service. And guess what? If you're on AWS, you'll be using CloudWatch. Guess what? If you're in the data center, you're going to be looking at logs. Guess what? If you're in Google, you're going to be looking at logs. If you're in Azure, you're going to be looking at logs. If you're in Dell, you'll be looking at logs. And everybody's got a logging service. AWS calls theirs CloudWatch. Could have just called it AWS Logs. We don't know what it is, but they call it CloudWatch. All right. So CloudWatch is a monitoring service that monitors your AWS resources in your applications. It gives you metrics on performance, helps you troubleshoot. It can monitor your applications, for example, and it can use built-in metrics or custom metrics. Now, logging is critical. Your logs will tell you what's going on. You want to know if your capacity of your systems is good? Check your logs. You want to know what wrong? Check your logs. Something's not working? Check your logs. Applications are feeling slow? Check your logs. Not sure if you were hacked? Check your logs. So here's the key. Your logs are so important. They're literally so critical. So let's talk about it. CloudWatch has built-in metrics. And if you use the standard based CloudWatch with nothing else, basic by default, you get access to the CPU, the disk read-write performance, the input and output operations of your network, and your network utilization. So CPU, disk, network. Anything missing there? Yeah, almost everything. I don't know my memory utilization, for example. I could have a CPU where I can have a server, the CPU could be at 5%, but the memory is at 100%, it's going to crash. I won't know that with the basic logging. So basic logging, well, not giving you a lot, but you can create a CloudWatch custom metric and it'll tell you things about memory or API or other metrics that matter. And CloudWatch has some notification systems which are really good. Again, all logging can have some notification systems that's real good, but CloudWatch, being like any other logging system, has some really good things. So CloudWatch has this concept of a CloudWatch event, which means that if something happens, it can notify you. Ding, 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 something happened. It's an event. And that event can kick off a Lambda function, auto scaling. We can use SNS to fan out a message, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So any kind of logging that's actionable in your system is fantastic. And CloudWatch is one of those environments. So realistically speaking, with CloudWatch, you've got options. You can do basic monitoring, which gives you data every 5 minutes. And you can do detailed monitoring, which gives you data every minute at 1 additional charge. But you're going to have to tell each system to do it. So I want you to think about this. If you get your data every 5 minutes, what are you getting? An average over the course of 5 minutes. So imagine, and I've seen this happen so many times in my life, the CPU of a router, switch, server, doesn't matter, is at 0%. It goes up to 100% for 3 seconds and the system crashes or doesn't work for 20, and then the CPU goes back to 10. And we may see this happen twice or 3 times in the course of 5 minutes. Now, here's the problem. We might still get a CPU average utilization of 10%, but the CPU's pegged 2 or 3 times. And with basic monitoring, we're never gonna know it. So there's that. And the reason is we might not monitor or send us information fast enough to catch it. But if we send notifications every 30 seconds or every minute, what do we have? Too much data. So you have to determine the right amount of data that you need. How do you determine the right amount of data that you need? It's all based upon your business requirements. No, you don't hear me talk about, well, I'm talking about tech and people ask why, what, how? And I say it's always dependent upon the business goals. What business problem are you trying to solve? So in those kind of cases. So you can enable both detailed and non-detailed. So let's talk a little bit about Amazon CloudWatch Events. And this basically gives you real-time notifications of systems events. So basically you set up a rule and an event that matches the sets of rules. And as soon as something happens, as soon as CloudWatch notices it, CloudWatch Events becomes aware of the changes. They respond. Does it send a message to you? Does it kick off a Lambda function? Does it make a change? It's very cool. It's event driven. It's very, very, very cool. So we'll get to CloudTrail, and then we'll probably go to take a break for 5 minutes and do questions before we get to config. Or I'll ask Chris where we are time-wise. So let's talk about CloudTrail. If CloudWatch is for logging, CloudWatch is for logging, test question, CloudWatch is for logging, test question, CloudWatch is for logging. So if CloudWatch is for logging, CloudTrail is for auditing. So CloudWatch monitor stuff in real time. CloudTrail is this following. I'm looking at the Blue Wrench Chow. Chow VPN'd into our data center. Chow created 3 virtual machines. One virtual machine was Kali Linux, which she was using to test her security skills. And the other 2 machines were a Red Hat system and a Windows system. She was using the Kali Linux to hack into those machines. And guess what? Because it's CloudTrail, I got a notification. So I saw what she did. Chow came in. I can see when she logged in. I can see what she did. And I've got a list, literally speaking, a list of everything she did. That's CloudTrail. So if you've got a bank that needs audits, CloudTrail. If you've got a healthcare organization that needs audits, CloudTrail. So that's the difference between CloudWatch. CloudWatch is logging, CloudTrail is auditing. So I was going to get to that next, Chow, but I saw that little blue wrench question and I saw it was coming from you. So I wanted to make sure we had it. CloudWatch logging, CloudTrail is auditing. So here's how it works. CloudTrail will give you an audit log. CloudTrail will track any changes made by a user, a role, or a service. And that's it. So in order to, CloudTrail is enabled when you create your AWS account, but to use it, to start it, you create a trail with the CloudWatch console, the CLI, or the API, and CloudTrail records and these events are sent to the CloudTrail console. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. We'll talk a little bit more about CloudTrail. The event history will let you view events that have occurred in the last 90 days, which is pretty good. But if you want to store stuff beyond 90 days, here's what you do. You can send it to an S3 bucket, and you can hold on to it for a long time. So let's talk about the types of trails that can be created. A type of trail that is local to one region. A one region only trail could be created. This will store your CloudWatch logs into a single bucket. And basically, this is your default option. Now, if you want something more sophisticated, you can create a trail that applies to all regions. This provides the most comprehensive logging and auditing functionality. It provides a record of all events inside of an organization's infrastructure. And this is realistically helps an organization correlate events across a wide variety of organizations and gives them insight into fixing problems. So monitoring is pretty much one of those pretty great things. So let's go over there, look at it real quick. CloudTrail, you get your information and you can store it if you desired in some S3 buckets. So before we get into config and some of these other AWS services, I thought we should open it up for your questions for a minute or two. Isn't EKS non-proprietary, Vikas? EKS is mostly non-proprietary because it's Kubernetes. But remember, it's managed by AWS. So the good news with EKS, which is why I said we could use it, was EKS is Kubernetes containers, which we can move them. But I'd rather manage my own cluster. I don't want anybody in control of my own clusters. I want to be in control of the cluster, and I want to copy my clusters and my containers all to multiple clouds being identical. So I probably wouldn't use EKS. I would set up my own Kubernetes cluster and manage that cluster the way I want it to. But yes, we could get away with EKS, Vikas, because it's not proprietary. It was ECS, which I said we probably should never use because it's like being handcuffed and locked in, where EKS is definitely an appropriate service, although I would probably just set up my own Kubernetes cluster and do it that way. And that way I was in full control. But great question. And yes, you are correct. EKS, not ECS. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Is the EKS really similar to moving a virtual machine? Absolutely not at all, Rakesh. Moving a virtual machine is you take your VMware ESXi file and you take a copy of it and you move it to the cloud. EKS is basically the orchestration of your containers. So it's a control plane is what EKS is, that it's not a virtual machine. It's the orchestration. It's kind of like moving a hypervisor, but the hypervisor is already on the cloud. So they're different. Chris, do you want to bring in the next one? Well, Wasim, I have a question. A lot of people are running after their TOGAF certified to become enterprise architects. Do we really need that? Well, Wasim, I'm an enterprise architect, and for most of my life, I've been taking the architectures done by TOGAF people and translating them into things that customers actually understand. Because TOGAF has this beautiful framework of systems and buses and this and that, and nobody ever knows what it is. So I know TOGAF is a good architecture. I didn't get the TOGAF architecture. I don't see a point in the TOGAF architecture. Wasim, here's the thing that takes people's careers. Architects don't build their careers by certifications. Engineers build their careers by certifications. Architects build their careers by business acumen, leadership, emotional intelligence, executive presence, communication skills. You can go out there and get that TOGAF certification, and it's not going to do anything for you. But if you go out there and build your business acumen, your leadership, your emotional intelligence, your communication skills, your executive presence, it can triple your salary. So I'm not a certification junkie. I build cloud architects. I get cloud architects hired. You can do a certification and add $5,000 US per year to your salary. You can work on your leadership, your emotional intelligence, and add $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year salary. Where do you want to do it? I'm not hiring anybody because of a certification. Nobody hires anybody because of a certification. They hire someone for technical competency, emotional intelligence, executive presence, communication skills, ability to do the job, ability to bring out the best in others, the business knowledge to transform an organization, the sales skills to do it, the presentation skills to delight an audience. Because as an architect, you're going to be presenting constantly. The executive writing skills, because you're going to be in the media constantly. For example, I get interviewed by the media almost every day. We're in over 400 newspapers one day, and the next day on Monday, I'm doing a live radio show. And you're going to be doing that as an architect. So they're the skills that matter, not your 40th certification. Get the Certified Solution Architect Professional, then figure out what career you want. If it's security, get a CISSP or a CCSP and be done with your certification. If it's networking, get a CCNP and a CCIE along with the Certified Solution Architect Professional, and then no more certifications. If you want to build a career, focus on the business stuff that matters. So you don't need it. You need to focus on bigger, more important things. But also, you have to learn how to do architecture, and they don't really teach that in TOGAF either, unfortunately. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? And yes, Chris, is there any more? Because yes, each cloud vendor has their own using the service potentially locks. There's anything that can be vendor agnostic, of course, because there's logging services that you can use for everybody that would be hosted on virtual machines. But the reality is you're potentially dealing with each vendor's logging service, and that's just part of the challenges with multi-clouds. But the logging services aren't that bad, and there are things that we can do, other logging services that are more commercial, but we can probably get away with the logging services that are native to the cloud. But in certain cases, we need extra proprietary things we can do it. But yes, we could get away with it in most cases. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? We're reviewing many of the services offered by AWS. To clarify, can all these services be launched by CloudFormation or Terraform, including the logging and auditing? Mark, most of these services can be deployed via Terraform. Now, there's two options in this world. There's something called Terraform, which is how your DevOps engineers, not your architects don't do this, DevOps engineers do this, but your DevOps engineers could be using Terraform to deploy things across multiple clouds. Now, there is a AWS proprietary, so nobody should ever use this thing called CloudFormation, which is a way you could write a script to deploy AWS stuff. But again, it's just AWS stuff. So people are using Terraform so they can manage their OpenStack or Nutanix cloud in their data center, AWS, Azure, and Google. And since you really have to be not caring about your customers to be using a single cloud because it's got too many single points of failure, CloudFormation, I think, is ripe for the trash. And Terraform, I think, is one of the best tools out there for cloud computing for the DevOps engineers that actually use this. And in some cases, the maintenance people, like sysops people, may use it to launch things. And occasionally a cloud engineer might, but it's not a cloud architect skill. Cloud architects are system designers, so keep that in the back of your mind. But yes, they can be configured by Terraform or CloudFormation. Chris, is there any others?
Oh, yeah.
What's the difference between, well, one works on every cloud, Terraform, and one only works on AWS. So it doesn't make it, and if you have your code on Terraform and things don't work well on AWS, you can be on Azure in a couple of minutes. So it doesn't make any sense to ever use CloudFormation because it only works on AWS, where Terraform works on everybody. And Terraform is a phenomenal tool. Chris, you can bring in the next one. John, I'm not sure it changes. They were per minute, and I think they went per second, but it's not something that I pay attention to.
It currently, according to their site, it's per second.
Per second. It was per minute.
For now.
Yeah. Okay. What happened is another new cloud provider offered per second, and they switched because they weren't cost competitive. So thanks, Chris. Chris, you can bring that. Does using ECS or EKS eliminate the need for setting up auto scaling groups? No, because the reality is that's just the orchestration. This is the orchestration or the control plane. The data plane is whether it's going to be servers is still going to have to auto scale. So unless you use Fargate, which is basically a serverless environment for your containers, which theoretically is going to scale what you need, but otherwise, no, it doesn't eliminate that at all. Because your containers aren't hosted on ECS or EKS, it's just a control plane. Chris, you can bring in the next one. What factors to consider choosing on a cloud provider? Say I could go on for about 6 weeks on this topic. Location will determine your latency. Trust in the cloud provider. For example, one of the cloud providers doesn't kicked out certain people based upon philosophical beliefs. So you might, if you're part of that philosophical belief stream that didn't go well when that one cloud provider kicked out an organization because of its political beliefs, you might not want to be in that cloud provider. Which cloud provider is willing to give the most flexible terms? Which cloud provider is willing to trade a press release in favor of cheaper pricing? Which cloud provider has better attributes for the things that you're trying to do? Which cloud provider is willing to negotiate more with you? Which cloud provider have you had success for? Which cloud provider does your CEO have a relationship with? I mean, this could go on and on. Which cloud provider has better virtual machines? Which cloud provider has lower latency? Which cloud provider do you trust? For example, If a cloud provider tells you stories about outages and you don't believe those stories because they don't sound reasonable, you might not put your faith in them, and you might want to go to other cloud providers. Azure got hacked. Azure told everybody, we were hacked. This number of clients were done. Do I trust Azure? Absolutely. Everybody gets hacked, but they told me how they were hacked and why they were hacked, and I trust they fixed it. If they just said, hey, we had some problem, and they were vague about the problem and fluffy about the problem, I might not use them because I don't trust them, because I might be worried. So transparency determines what other people are doing in the industry. But really, which one's got a more transformative service? There's thousands of reasons, more than just price. John Clark. Are both CloudWatch and CloudTrail? Well, CloudTrail can be kept for up to as long as you want on, as long as you want, and you can always dump your logs into S3, and you can always do things to keep logs a lot longer should you choose so. But by default, that's 90 days. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? What is Amazon's Fargate? So normally speaking, you've got your 3 servers that are, realistically speaking, these 3 servers are your control plane, which orchestrates your cluster. And then you basically have to store your containers on a computing platform, which is typically a virtual machine. Amazon Fargate is saying, hey, instead of having virtual machines that you have to manage, control, lock down, and you can, when you do this, when you have your virtual machines, you can control them, lock them down, and do whatever you want in a perfect manner. But they're saying, instead of that, you don't have to do any of the work. Here, you can just deposit your containers on Fargate. It's self-hosted. You won't have to worry about memory, CPU. It's all managed automatically for you. Nothing to think about. So it's basically a fully managed platform to store your containers. Yeah, knowledge of the OSI model is extremely important for everything. It's going to guide you in every way for the networking piece. Every way. Chris, we can do 1 or 2 more. Well, Francis, if you want to, you can't possibly be redundant if your client wants to go to multi-cloud, and here's the reason. If, for example, AWS, people were using multiple abilities zones and multiple regions, and they had a power failure, and multiple regions were taken out by a power failure in a single region. Then they had an impaired network device. Now, I don't know whether the network device went to a bar and started drinking cocktails to become an impaired network device. I don't know what an impaired network device is with 25 years of networking experience, but they had an impaired network device and it took down systems all across the world. So here's the thing. Anytime you go to a cloud provider and they have a control plane failure, a network failure, which is the ORCID, which is basically the underlying plumbing, or they get hacked, if it happens on a cloud provider, assume you're going to be dead on a single cloud provider. So if you choose to use a single cloud, guess what? There will be an outage and you won't be able to do anything about it, and you're going to be really, really stuck. So that means if you deploy your systems in 10 regions and 2 availability zones per region, and they have a control plane failure, a hacking event, or a networking event, you're dead. You're outdone. So that's why nobody should ever, ever, ever use it, because it's not going to work. There is no true high availability on a single cloud. But Francis, if you care, you can use 2 regions and 2 availability zones for regions. And AWS claims that'll get you to 99.999%. Now, mind you, no cloud provider got anybody to 99.99%, let alone 99.999% this year. So if you insist on doing it, realize you've got lots of single points of failure and you're going to have outages. So either hybrid cloud or multi-cloud. But even if you use multi-regions and multi-availability zones per region, like the cloud providers recommend, we've seen these outages affect multiple regions and multiple, which would not happen with an impaired network device, and it would not happen with a power outage. But to be fair, I've never seen a data center power outage, because data centers typically have 2 power companies coming in. They typically have multiple generators. They typically have backup batteries. So, I don't know. So, there's that thing. So if you really care about it, 2 clouds minimum. Kemi Thompson, so good to see you today. What is the code in Elastic Beanstalk? Will the code specify resources? Yeah, well, the code is basically your application code and a little bit of other stuff, and the resources know what to do with it. Kemi, I've never used Elastic Beanstalk. I don't ever, ever, ever use anything that's automatic. Now, I could see having my my data, what do you call it? My DevOps engineers use Terraform, and that would be awesome. But this kind of thing I would never use, because once you do things automatically, you lose control, and it's never as good as if you designed it yourself. So I don't exactly know, but I know it takes Node.js and Go and Java and Ruby and all your usual suspects. And let's come back to the content here. So let's talk about the security service called AWS Config. Now, when you put systems down, if you're like me and you've been around for a long period of time, I think here's what you need to know. So someone like me that's been around for a while, I used to run around with a sniffer. When I was younger, they used to call me Sniffer Boy, because what I did is I stuck my protocol analyzer in span ports throughout the networks, and I literally looked at the traffic. And why was I Sniffer Boy? Because I knew that somebody would put a modem on the back of their computer. Yes, a modem for dial-up connections for remote come home. And then somebody had a streaming server that was streaming music. And then somebody else was watching porn all day, taking down the systems network. And somebody else was running a pirate site, all on a corporate network. So there was me and a bunch of us network engineers. They called the Sniffer Boys. We'd plug in our cables. Okay, we'd look at the traffic, and then I'd go, "Hey, Joe, can I talk to you for a minute? Joe, you got to do your porn at home, because we only have a T1 line, which is 1.54 megs, and you're using 3/4 of the organization's data on your thing. Sally, that Napster server that you're running is taking the remaining 25% of our server internet bandwidth. Oh, Joey, you know what I noticed, Joey, you're running a web server sitting on your desk." And he's like, yeah, isn't it cool? I'm like, no, it's not cool, because there's no firewall, there's no this, there's no this, there's no this. And you ran a GRE tunnel to the internet, which was really smart. But oh, by the way, you just took down all of our corporate security, so I need your server right now. I'm taking it down. So that's why I was Sniffer Boy. So the reason I'm telling you all about being Sniffer Boy is as follows. When you look at what's deployed in a system, you will be surprised by what's there. I mean, you'll never know what somebody will do. So AWS has a solution for that. And the reality is, this is an elegant solution. So I'll tell you when there's things that I like, and I'll tell you when there's things that you probably should skip. But AWS Config is pretty awesome. It's a service that enables the assessment, auditing, and evaluation of your configurations. So it gives you an opportunity to see what changes were made, who made them, and when. Woohoo! So the next time that person puts something that's going to take down your network, like that web server with no security, you're going to know about it, so you can do something about it. This is good. So here's how it works. Sally makes a change. SNS alert goes to Iwadoikia. Iwadoikia says Sally's change is good. Sally's change is bad. Iwadoikia finds somebody else with a wrench. Who else has got a wrench today? Chow's got a wrench. And she sends it to Chow for remediation. So that's what we're dealing with. That's why we love config. Anytime you can notify stuff that's there. Now, why can't we just have Mike run around with a sniffer? Well, I can't knock on the door at AWS. I can't open the door. I can't SSH into their switches. I can't create a span port on my own personal VLAN and hang out there and sniff all day. So they're not going to let me do that. So because I can't do that, we're going to use config, and we're going to love it. So config is going to provide constant monitor configurations, and it'll check your configurations across the organization's policy. So this is beautiful. And if a change occurs, we get notified. Beautiful. So change management, assistance here, can integrate with CloudTrail. This is absolutely beautiful. So here's how it works. Configuration change is made. Iwadoikia makes a configuration change. Config notes the records. And then config will say, yes, does this comply or not comply? If it doesn't comply, it sends Chow or Jazz something that says, fix this. And that's why we love this. So it looks like this. Configuration change is made, and it notifies things. So absolutely beautiful service. Okay, so now we're going to get into a major topic in the AWS environment. And it's regarding a content delivery network. So we're going to talk about what is a content delivery network and why they are. Most people, meaning 99% of the people, are confused on what a content delivery network is. Most people think a content delivery network, and if you read it on AWS, they're going to say it's a bunch of servers in every major city. Okay, but what is a content delivery network? A network, and servers are not network devices. Servers are end devices, not network devices. So what is a content delivery network? It is a network designed to spread content to the users faster, meaning it's a dedicated network. And why is a dedicated network different? Well, internet bandwidth is best effort. We can build our own private networks, and by doing it, we can run QoS on our networks. We can make sure our traffic gets there. We can control our traffic and bandwidth. So if you're on their internet, you don't know how your traffic is going to get there. But if I can take you off of the internet, get you on my private high-speed network on the way to the server, and then back to you, I've speeded it up. I took you off the bad internet, the slow internet, and I took you into my race car, my Ferrari, my Lamborghini, or whatever the fancy rest cars are. I don't really know. I drive an SUV because it doesn't hurt my back and my herniated disc. But whatever those fast cars are, that's your point. So it's getting you off of the internet. So a content delivery network is a group of servers that are deployed with a private network behind them. Content delivery network can reduce bandwidth costs by producing caching, and I'll show you how that works. They can reduce overhead on your servers, enabling to scale beyond your wildest dreams, because the content delivery network does a lot of the replication. Plus, your content delivery networks can add an incredible amount of security, and it provides a lot of DDoS protection by making sure only good requests go to your servers. You can implement security certificates on your content delivery network, and it even can add availability, because if we all wanted to go to the www.gocloudcareers.com website, and Cindy the cat unplugged my web server or powered it off with her cute little paws, which she does constantly. I need to lock my servers better for my cat, but she's really cute and she doesn't like locked doors, so it's a problem. So, with my content delivery network, if Cindy powers off the www.gocloudcareers.com server, guess what? It's cached throughout the world. So people will be able to still access that website before the cache time is out. And until I see that Cindy the cat has used her paw, pushed off the power button, I plug it back in, and then everybody gets access to the website. So it can potentially improve your availability. Now, people that didn't have cache data wouldn't see Cindy the cat, but those that did would see it again. So it's at least some additional thing. So let's talk a little bit more about it. When you're using a CDN like Amazon CloudFront, it can really improve your website hosting performance. And here's the reason why. Let me describe to you how this works. So here I am. I'm at my house. I want to go to www.gocloudcareers.com. So I go to my website, and I type www.gocloudcareers.com. Now, my DNS looks it up, and it tells me where to go. And I go make that request, and I hit my local CloudFront distribution, which is, I think, in Miami, Florida. I go to the Miami, Florida CloudFront distribution, and nobody went to GoCloudCareers yet that day. So here's what happens. I request it. So I go to www.gocloudcareers.com. It's not, and it goes to the content delivery network. It's not there. It hits the regional cache. It's not there. And it sends it to the source, which just happens to be just an S3 bucket. And then it sends the information back to CloudFront, and then it sends it to me. Now, Cindy, my beautiful cat, decides she's going to take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. So Cindy uses her pause, www.gocloudcareers, and then she licks it and then types .com. So now that's Cindy. Now Cindy hits the CloudFront distribution, and I already got it, so it goes straight back to Cindy. So my cat Cindy, who has a much lower attention span than me, got her content when she wanted it by going to the content distribution. So first request this is called the cache miss. Second set is a cache hit. Why? Because it was stored on the cache. So let's talk about caching and website scalability. Caching can have a massive, massive Massive impact in your scalability, because going back to what we showed you, if the information is stored on the cache, it doesn't go back to your web server. So if you have frequently accessed content, like for example, let's say we write a new article on BGP for cloud architects, and we tell everybody, and 50,000 people that day go to that blog, which is pretty normal. When 50,000 people hit that blog, here's what's going to happen. The first 5,000 or the first 100 might actually request it the first time. And the remaining stuff is going to sit in the cache in those servers. So we might get 50,000 hits, but our servers might process 1,000 of them versus 50,000. Could you imagine how much that saves you? Huge reductions in server utilization, improvements in speed, improvements in agility, improvements in performance. This is good stuff. So that's why we're talking about what we're talking about. Now, when you're dealing with AWS, it's going to integrate into so many different AWS services like S3. For example, if you want to use CloudFront, it will front end an S3 bucket for a static website, and it's beautiful. But if you have a dynamic website, the 3-tier kind of sites, web servers, app servers, database servers, and it's not static content, you have to use CloudFront and directly in front of your load balancer, the website-facing load balancer. Just keep that in mind. And architecturally, this is what it looks like. Let's say you've got a combination website, a combination of static content and dynamic content. So basically, your static content is connected to CloudFront. And like I said, for your dynamic content, what you realistically need to do is you need to use a load balancer to front end your virtual machine. So let's talk about some key CloudFront concepts. There's 3 of them that you really need to know. There's something called the distribution and origin and cache control, and we're going to cover all 3. When you first set up CloudFront, you need to set up a CloudFront distribution, and your distribution is going to be identified by an DNS name. Now, it's going to be the ugliest name you can possibly think of. It's going to be like abcd.efg11234.cloudfront.net. It's going to be ugly. So if you don't want that to be the URL for your new website, which it becomes, what you want to do is remember that DNS concept of the CNAME record, where we can take www.gocloudcareers.com and we can map it to something else. That's what we do. We'll take our real URL that we want and we'll create a CNAME record to that ugly CloudFront distribution name. And nobody knows the wiser, and everybody gets a pretty website on Amazon.com when they're really getting something theirs. And if you don't know what it is, and if you really want to see that website, what it looks like, any of you can do an NS lookup from a command prompt or a terminal prompt, and you can do an NS lookup of www.amazon.com, and you'll see its ugly looking name. And then you'll see that you went to this beautiful www.amazon.com to go buy your new computer, and it showed up in 2 days miraculously. So you get the user-friendly side of it, but behind it, there's something else. So keep that in mind with CloudFront. So let's talk about the origin. When you set up CloudFront, you have to set up the origin. So what's the origin? Because they made all these complicated names. The origin is just where your content's coming from. So it could be a bucket, your S3 bucket for a static website, like Cindy the cat photos. It could be an EC2 instance or the load balancer of your website. That's the origin. And the origin is going to be the points to the DNS name of your location. So if that origin is going to be the S3 bucket, you'll use its fully qualified domain name, cindythecat.s3.com or whatever you want to call it. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is cache control. When we talk about caching information, and whether it's a Redis cache or a content delivery network, we have to remember the architectural trade-off. If the cache is a month long, you can have data that's up to a month old sitting in your cache. If your cache is 1 minute long, guess what? After 60 seconds, which is 1 minute, every time somebody goes to the same website, they're going to have to go back to the server. So basically speaking, the shorter the cache, the more overhead on your servers and the more work on your content delivery network. So you have to find a balance. By default, CloudFront caches your data for 24 hours, which means if you make a change, it could be up to 24 hours before the world knows about it. But when you use this, you've got really reduced server workload, lots of DDoS protection, because remember, this stuff's not going to hit your servers, faster speeds, reduced data charges, all good stuff. But if you're like a news site that changes your content once an hour, Well, then that's not going to be good because your cache is going to have to be about an hour long. So how long the cache is based upon what? Your business requirements. What is the business use case? How often does the company need to change its externally facing data? What does the data do for the customer? How does the data and a web page affect the customer's finances? How does it affect their sales? How does it affect their marketing? See, it all goes back to business. I love tech. You guys love tech. We love tech. It's cool. I've got switches. I'm streaming to you right now with a 64 core computer with a couple of Quadro cards in it, and for GPU performance, and it's my hobby. But reality is businesses buy tech because they don't like tech. Businesses buy tech for transformation. So you've got to be able to put it all in business context. Otherwise, it's just tech, and only we techies like the tech. So keep that in your mind. You can modify the TTO. And if any of you have ever worked on caches before, and we've noticed that the cache got corrupted, you can always clear the cache. So you just keep that in the back of your mind. So let's set up CloudFront. How do we do it? We set up the web servers, and then we create our CloudFront distribution. AWS assigns a name for them, and we either accept the name without ugly looking name, or we're smart, and we create a CNAME record to something pretty and beautiful, and then AWS will provision your location. So I know we talked about this a little bit on day one, but I want to at least architecturally look at it. So remember on day one, we talked about these large geographic regions called the region, and we talked about the data centers becoming availability zones. And we said that we had this content delivery network that had good, strong private network performance to these edge locations. So that's realistically speaking where the edge locations are. So looking at it one more time, here's Cindy the cat over here. Cindy the cat decides she wants to become a cloud architect. So Cindy the cat types www.gocloudcareers.com. Cindy goes to this edge location and it's not there, so it goes to the cache. Then the cache, she gets answered, the information is dropped off at the regional cache, then the edge location, and then me. Now, because we're dealing with the same, now this is a new edge location. This is now in New York, not Miami. Hector in New York decides he wants to go to www.gocloudcareers.com because he wants to become a cloud architect. He goes, it's not on the cache forwards it over here, and then it gets dropped back to the edge regional cache, edge location dropped off the user. Now, my wife decides that she wants to go see what we're doing with the website changes. So she's here. She goes to www.gocloudcareers.com. Now remember, my cat Cindy just went there. So here's what happens. My wife goes to the edge location, poof, she served the message back. Now, over here where we're at, let's say Jose wants to get his information. And now he does because it's directly on the cache. Now, Victor wants his information. Poof, it's directly on the cache. Cornelia wants the information. It's directly on the cache. So that's why we're using these things, because it's going to help with frequently accessed content. So let's talk about private content. Lots of organizations are using content delivery networks, right? But some organizations have private content. We have private content. We try and give so much to the community, free technical training in every way we possibly can. But we have private content, the things that help people get hired, which are different than just the tech. So, when we do that, we have private content. Because of that, we have username and password access to it, access to our data centers, etc. So for that, for our paid website subscribers and our private applications, we can use a content delivery network to speed their performance too. But and how do we do this? We set up an origin access identity. Basically speaking, we restrict access to our S3 buckets to the people that say the blue wrenches or the people that are my students. And businesses do this every single day. So they limit access to private content. You set up the origin access identity, restrict it to wherever it's at, use sign URLs, sign cookies, and then the people get it that's there. So I'll go back and mention it one more time. When you're using sign URLs, if you sign the URL, the way you sign the URL determines how long the signature is good. So if you sign it with an IAM instance profile, it's good for 6 hours, up to. If you sign it with a security token service, it's good for up to 36 hours. If you sign it with an IAM user account, it's good for 7 days. And if you use a temporary token, guess what? It's good until the token expires. Okay, 2 more slides on CloudFront, then we'll take some questions. CloudFront, as we described, can really help your performance because your content's cached. There's about, at least at the time I made these slides, 217 points of presence for CloudFront. Why is it so good? We've got those caching servers, which I showed you how the cache is. But remember, when Cindy the cat went to gocloudcareers.com and she hit that edge location, the edge location took her on the private AWS network back to my systems. It didn't go across the public internet. So by getting off of the public internet into a private network to better, higher performance systems, I did a lot to really help my customers. I sped my performance, I enhanced my DDoS protection, I may have decreased inter-regional transfer charges, data transfer charges. So CloudFront and content delivery networks are beautiful. A little more about CloudFront. You can use the CloudFront web application firewall if you're going to use that as a firewall, or you can use your enterprise grade firewalls with your load balancers the way we showed you in the security day. But whatever you're doing, it's there. It depends on the assets you're protecting. All on the assets. Now, when you're using CloudFront and WAF, it gives you Shield Standard at no cost. Remember, Shield is the free version of DDoS protection you can use with the Content Delivery Network and AWS. And it will help with DDoS attacks. Your CloudFront is because it'll distribute your content through points of presence. It'll look at your content. So if you're getting a hacker sending a bunch of invalid HTTPS requests to you or HTTP requests, the Content Delivery Network will just block them right there. So your web servers don't see them or have to process them. So big security boost. So the attacker just can't send 1,000,001 bad requests to your servers. Additionally, the CloudFront can enforce your SSL TLS protocols, work with your certificate manager, and it supports, server name identification, custom certificates, etc. So let's answer some questions. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them. We talked about content delivery networks, and that stuff's always complicated. So let's make sure we give you anything that you need. Chris, it's up to you if you want to tell me what kind of questions we've had or not had.
Yeah, give me just 1 second.
You got it. I see a lot of blue wrench activity, and because I see a lot of blue wrench activity, I figure a lot of stuff.
This one's already been addressed, but I figured I'd let you address it too.
Yeah, so there's a terminology used in critical performance and tactical environments that say 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is greater than 2. So 1 cloud provider, assume you're done. 2 cloud providers, you're fine. But 3 is always better than 2. Don't put all your eggs in 1 basket. Heck, don't put all your eggs in 2 baskets. If it matters, put them in 3, 4, or 5, or 6 baskets. And that way, when the wolf tries to steal your eggs, you're still good. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Is there an open standard equivalent for AWS config? Not that I'm aware of, but there are, applications that are used widely in the enterprise environment to track certain changes in certain systems. So there are things you could do, but exactly AWS config, not exactly. Config and inspector are pretty similar. Inspector is more of a pure security service. Config is more looking for things that don't fall outside of your security policy, but they're doing a lot of the same things. Chris, if you want to go to the next one. Netflix wouldn't exactly be a signed URL. A signed URL is when someone sends you something that's here, click to download. Netflix could be using a hidden signed URL that we can't see, that's sitting in between your set-top box and your TV. So the answer is, I don't know. They could be doing it in one of a few ways. A signed cookie could be assigning a URL would be one of the many ways they could do it. So I'm not exactly sure how they do it, but it definitely could work that way. Chris, bring in the next one. So the origin could be your S3 bucket or your servers, absolutely, that you create. So whatever the source is for your website, whether it's your S3 bucket for static content or your EC2 instances, or the load balancer directly in front of them, definitely speaking, the origin is the source of your content, wherever that's up here. I don't know anything. I don't know what you mean by JWS tokens. Again, I don't really use acronyms in communication because they cause so much confusion. So if you tell me exactly what they are, I can try and answer your questions, but I need to actually know what it is. And JWS could be one of literally 400 to 500 different abbreviations. So we need to be something I need something to work with. Can TTL be customized based upon content? No, but you can customize the TTL based upon all your content. So the TTL can be 3 hours for your website, or 1 minute, or a month. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Can I think of a use case where a CDN is not needed? Heck, there's lots of times you can get away without a CDN. But if you do, your performance will be slower, which means sites won't rank as well on Google search rankings. So I probably wouldn't do it. If you don't use a CDN, you're going to have much more security problems as a rule, because it covers some of your DDoS requirements. So most small websites, Mark, that people have don't have a content delivery network. But if you've got an international audience, or you've got an audience that's geographically diverse, and you want to spend less money for your web servers, I'd probably be using that. Because if you don't have the content delivery network, you're going to be dealing with much bigger web servers, which is going to cost you much more. And as your stuff, and if people request your information across regions, you're going to get more charges. So there's lots of use cases where a CDN is not needed, but there's lots of use cases where it is. So it all goes back to this, Mark. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? What is the worth of that website to the customer? What is that customer trying to do that website? Is search engine optimization part of their business? If so, they probably need a CDN. Are they advertisement heavy? In which case, the CDN makes more sense. Do they already have people knowing who they are? Where are they geographically distributed? What's the purpose of the website? Is it informational? Is it transactional? Is it the same content, or is it similar content, or is the content constantly changed? All that will determine whether you need one or not. It all goes back to business requirements, because I can come with 1,000 use cases why they are, or 1,000 not, but we all start at the business. What are the business goals? Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. That's an easy one to answer. CloudFront is a content delivery network which spreads your content out for the rest of the world. A proxy server is this. I choose to say Abigail is no longer allowed to access the internet. She's staying in my house for the next month. She's helping Cindy the cat with something. She's helping me to sign something that's really critical. And I say, Abigail, you're not allowed to go to the internet. What you're allowed to go to, Abigail, is this one server. And that one server is going to have a policy of where you're allowed to go to the internet. And that server will connect to the internet and give it back to you. So a proxy server is used by businesses kind of like a cache 30 years ago. And what happened is, back when our internet connections were 128 kilobits per second or 1.5 megabytes per second, what would happen is I might go to Yahoo. Somebody inside my company might go to Yahoo. Another person would go to Yahoo. And because we had them all behind the proxy server, we'd point everybody to the proxy server. I'd go to Yahoo and it would be cached on the proxy server, but that was inside of our organization. The other cases where you have proxy server are, for example, let's say you wanted to go to the United Arab Emirates. I don't know if it's changed, but last time I was there, they had a proxy server. In the United Arab Emirates, for example, which I was treated so well and had some of the most amazing trips to in my career, public internet access is not allowed because certain things are considered illicit activities and they're illegal in the country. So everybody goes to a proxy server. So if somebody tries to go to something that's deemed inappropriate, they're blocked. They go to the proxy server says no. Now, many organizations internally also used to use proxy servers, and here's why. You don't want your employees going to porn sites. You don't want your employees doing illegal betting. You don't want your employees doing illegal things. So we used to use a service called WebSense. We would have a proxy service which would go to WebSense, and then Abigail would go to, I want to go to cindythecat.com. Abigail would get that web page. Eva Doike would say, I want to go there, and she'd get it. Somebody else goes to the anarchist website and they're blocked because WebSense didn't allow it. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So proxy servers are internal. Content delivery networks are external and global for the world. So I hope I answered that, because that was a really good question, because they're both doing caching functionalities, just differently. Well, how does it determine where your content's coming from? Remember, you actually have to set up your origins. So you set up your origins and then it knows. Chris, you want to go to the next one? Great question there, Beckus. Is CDN effective for dynamic content as well as static content? Yes, very effective. But remember, if your content changes frequently, it's not going to be useful. So if everybody's requesting the same dynamic content could be a news site with things that are there. Yeah, it's super valid. But, it could be if it's where Abigail goes to get something and Eva Doike goes to get another thing, and Pierre goes to get another thing, and Charles goes to get another thing, and Jamal goes to get another thing, and Mark gets another thing, then it's not going to help. So it's the same thing like database caching. If everybody's looking for the same information, it helps. But if everybody's looking for different information, the cache is no value. So keep that in the back of your mind. And again, goes back to the business case. What kind of data are you sharing? What are your customers trying to find? Good question there, Bonnet. Chris, you want to go to the next one? Pierre, generally speaking, you can use lots of content delivery networks. For example, you could use Akamai, Cloudflare. So lots of content delivery networks are out there, and they all serve the same purpose. They enable you to speed content to different people throughout the world. So, of course. Okay, so let's get back to the content here. I like when there's questions. So before we go to the next thing, because I know we're here, it's a Saturday, we could be sleepy. If you can all type hashtag cloud architect, hashtag cloud hired, I know you're here. I know you're awake, alert, and oriented ×3. When I see those things come in, I know you're excited and energetic and motivated to be here. So I'll look for some cloud hires and some cloud architects. Also, if you're here, hit the like, comment, subscribe. If you've not signed up for our completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional ebook, go download it. If you haven't subscribed to this channel and hit the bell notification, please hit that bell, because we have so many free things to help you this month coming out, and you won't know about them unless you hit that bell notification. So please subscribe and hit the bell. And also, while we're at it, please join us for next week's completely free interview training. And please join us for next week's Cloud Architect Challenge to see if you've got what it takes and know what it has, if you have what it takes right now to be a cloud architect. And if not, by the end of that session, you'll know everything you need to know that you need to learn to get cloud hired. So you'll know by the end of that session. So I want you all to have the best cloud architect careers, solution architect careers, enterprise architect careers, or any kind of career that you want. So come join us. It's all free this month. And please take advantage of these things. The free architect challenge, the free interview challenge, and the free networking. Now, the networking one's going to take a little while. It's probably going to take 2 weeks, and here's the reason why. The AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, you can put in a book for about 500 pages. A CCNA takes about 2,000 pages of book. A CCIE like me is about 75,000 pages of reading. So when people say the cloud is complicated, just imagine the network. Imagine needing to read 75,000 pages to start understanding networking. So, and really know what you're doing with it. So we're going to have fun with it. We're going to spend 2 weeks on the CCNA because we have a much bigger thing. And by the end of that, you'll know some networking. So let's talk about Lambda. Now, I've mentioned previously that I'm not Mr. Serverless in most cases, but all these cloud providers have something called the function. Whether it's a Lambda function or an Azure function, and Google has them, they're basically the ability for you to upload a very little tiny piece of code and just have it run for you. And pretty much you can create some of these things that are very similar for all the clouds, and they are very useful. So Amazon Lambda is awesome, and all the cloud providers have their equivalent, and pretty much we can use almost the same code on each. Here's the thing. Lambda are very, very, very little simple functions that you can automate. Wow, how good is that? Automating simple functions. So if things are complicated, automation isn't there. But if it's something very simple, we can use Lambda to truly, truly, truly automate things. Now, automation is great. What do businesses hire architects for? Well, lots of things. Increase sales, improve collaboration, create new service offerings. And anytime there's a rule that makes their employees expensive, we cloud architects are going to be called in to find ways to reduce the number of employees. You can't arbitrarily raise the rates. Everything is a supply and demand curve. Price of employees goes up, employers lay off. Price of employees goes down, employers hire. Supply and demand, the same way we buy, they buy. So Lambda, which is the serverless computing, is hugely beneficial. Now with Lambda, you can use the following programming languages. You can use C#, Go, Java and Node.js and Python, basically enables automation. So Lambda functions are really beautiful because they can be run in response to an event. So CloudWatch event occurs. Kick off a Lambda function to remediate it automatically. That's event-driven security. Nice stuff. So let's say I created a workflow. Go back to video editing. Let's say I have a workflow that does the following. I upload a file to an S3 bucket. After the file is uploaded, I send it to something that takes my standard video, compresses the video. Then after that, I send my compressed video to something else to get captions burned in. And then I get something else that says, Mike, your video is ready for download. So what I could do is I could have 4 different Lambda functions. After I upload it, instantly move it to the application. After it's done, send it for captions to be burned in. After it's done, send an email to Mike to say, download your video of your cat Cindy playing the piano and the violin all at the same time, Mike. Cindy's beautiful. So that's what we're really talking about. So, and kind of keep in mind that. So let's look at how you can use these kind of things, because this really is beautiful. And all the cloud providers have it. And the reality is, in most cases, we're going to be using these because there's not a lot of functional equivalents out there. And these are one of the things that makes the cloud so good. So go back to my previous example. I uploaded a video to S3. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice that, sorry, I'm just filling up a water here. You'll notice that we have a Lambda function that sends the information to a web server. And that web server sends me an email that says download. And then it points to the downloaded thing. And then you can see how we use the Lambda function to go to Amazon Transcribe to transcribe our videos. So you can see it's pretty great. You can automate so many things, and we absolutely love that. So let's think a little bit more about what we're doing here and why we're doing it here. So that's Lambda. Now, what if we could run Lambda closer to the users? And that's what Lambda at Edge is. So if you wanted to run a Lambda function at the edge of your content delivery network, you can do that, and it's called Lambda at Edge. It's just Lambda at the CloudFront Distribution Center. Where's the CloudFront Distribution Center called? It's called a edge location. So, Angelo, take care. So let's say this. Let's go back to our step functions. Remember I said how nice it is to have a Lambda function to automate things. So what if you could have one function occur, then another Lambda function, then another Lambda function, then another Lambda function, and I could automate everything. So I have to do something. Let's say it's on Monday. The first thing I have to do on Monday is speak to some reporting organization. An hour later, after speak to that reporting organization, I've got to speak to a bunch of radio stations and some nationally syndicated radio station. Wouldn't it be really cool after I speak to those 2 sets of reporters on Monday, if that whole radio station broadcast was recorded, and then we could send it someplace to have it transcribed, and then I could send this transcription out so everybody could read it for free. So that's normally my life, and I've not set up these Lambda functions, but that's the kind of thing I do every day. Speak to 2 or 3 press outlets, speak to lots of CEOs, speak to lots of hiring managers, speak to lots of recruiters, so we can make sure the students in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program are exactly what the customer wants, the hiring manager wants. So we do that. But if I could automate some of those things, it would make my life better. So what am I going to do? I'll set up a step function. And the step function will be as follows. I'll set up a function where something occurs. I do something, like I have that thing that's recorded, and then we record it. So we upload it to S3 and poof, Lambda functions is here. Then maybe I want to get it transcribed, Lambda functions here. Then maybe I want to get an email to a mass number of people, email, another Lambda function. So you can see, I can automate step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So instead of it's occurred, then I manually lock in, oh good, it's here. I can schedule things. So that's what Amazon step functions are. They're a scheduling application, like simple workflow solution, but this is to schedule your Lambda functions. So let's talk about AWS recognition. So for people like me that make lots of video content, AWS recognition is a good service. Amazon recognition is used for the filing, identifying the people in a video. Maybe you're running security, and you're running security for the entire world, and there's a terrorist you're looking for. You could have recognition search through thousands of hours of video and identify somebody and alert you. Let's say you've got a video that you're trying to produce. And when you had the video you made, you had an argument with your wife or your son or your cat or your dog, and you look like this. Hello, how are you? Maybe you don't want to see that. So you might use recognition to look for some bad things. What else might you use recognition? Let's say you've got a new product launch and you're in a stadium and you're describing it to people and you film the audience and you really want to see what they like. You can use recognition and it's going to analyze people's facial expressions and say, hey, guess what? The audience liked this, but not this. So don't talk about this, talk about this. Get rid of this, do this. Highly useful. Again, look at how this can impact the business. Now, what if you're looking for an offensive object? Something that would be that you don't know. Let's say you have videos made where you interview a lot of people. You know, I watched a video at some point and somebody told me it was called something called a bong, where there was some kind of a bong in the background. And I knew it was drug paraphernalia, but I didn't know what it was. And somebody's like, Mike, this video of this person talking has a bong in the background. And I'm like, is that bad? They're like, yeah, it means they're a drug user. I'm like, okay. Now, I don't know enough about it, but to really there. But that's the point. You can look for things that you don't really want that would be embarrassing to your business. You can look for anomalies. So you can really look for something. So kind of keep that in your mind. It's really, really great. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is something that I would say, I don't see the point. This is CloudFormation. CloudFormation is the AWS proprietary way to deploy your AWS services. AWS proprietary, which means it doesn't work on Azure, Google, Oracle, Dell, Nutanix, OpenStack. So I don't see a point. But if you wanted to lock yourself into AWS pre-deploying solutions and only AWS, you can create a CloudFormation template. And this template, you can pretty much set it up to auto-provision your AWS services. Again, you can swap all this out with the beautiful Terraform, which works everywhere. And it doesn't lock you into AWS. And if you have a problem with your AWS account, they raise your rates, you're unhappy, you can take your configuration, move it somewhere else. Now, there's always work to be done moving somewhere else, but by using infrastructure as code in Terraform versus infrastructure and code in AWS, you're prepared to use anything, anywhere, in any cloud provider, anytime. So our recommendations are not to use CloudFormation. No, we architects wouldn't be using CloudFormation anyway, but the DevOps engineers sure would be, and potentially the cloud engineers and the sysops people might. So realize it's a great way to template your information to make it easy to deploy things. It really is. But we've got Terraform, which is an open standard, CloudFormation, which is AWS proprietary, doesn't work on any of their clouds. So got an option that does, got an option that doesn't. Don't use the option that's proprietary. Don't use the option that limits your business. Don't use the option that's not good for your customer because it limits them. So Terraform for your DevOps engineers, much, much better solution than Tug. But realistically speaking, how it works is you make your template, you've got some text files with your supported programming language, and you're going to upload your file. It'll be either in JSON format or YAML template, just like your typical containers. You'll store your code in S3, and you'll use it by the API of the CloudFormation, and it'll instantly provision your systems based upon your code. So it's very good, this infrastructure as code, and it's critical for the DevOps engineers to do this. This is fantastic. Instant ability to go from one place to another place, deploy across multiple clouds. This kind of automation is legendary and life-changing for the DevOps community, but CloudFormation, only AWS. Terraform, good for everybody. So CloudFormation, I don't see a point. I don't recommend it ever. Now, when we're dealing with computing, we're dealing with security, right? So if you want to go to a web server, you've got plain text, HTTP port 80 stuff, or you can use HTTPS, which is encrypted, and it uses TCP port 443. So if you want to use HTTPS, what do you need? You need a certificate. So you've got to buy the certificate from somewhere. So with AWS, you can get your certificates from where else? The certificate manager. But guess what? If you're off AWS, you can buy certificates for your whole environment as well from a certificate authority. So it doesn't have to be AWS. You can go to any certificate authority and get certificates for any of your clouds, but you can get them from AWS too. And the certificate manager will basically add protection to your websites by adding a certificate. It'll enable and simplify the provisioning, management, and deployment of certificates, both public and private. Now, the certificate manager will allow users to deploy certificates on AWS resources quickly and effectively, and the certificate manager provides free and public certificates to AWS services like the Elastic Load Balancer and their AWS and the APIs. So here's what it's going to look like. You go to the certificate manager and you get your certificates for your load balancers, your CloudFront distributions, etc. So there are two options when you deploy your certificates: public ones and private ones. So normally speaking, we're talking about public, and the AWS certificate manager is for customers who want encryption using TLS security. And we get these certificates and you deploy them through your load balancers, your CloudFront distributions, your API gateways, etc., to make your communications secure. But there are times that an organization is concerned with their internal applications. Maybe you've got a web app that's an HR app that's web-based, for example. And even though they're internal to your entity, you still want to use encryption. So for that, you would use HTTPS for these internal sites, and you would still need a certificate. So from the certificate manager private certificate authority, you can get a private certificate, which is used for your computers, your applications, your services, and your servers inside of your VPC. But a private certificate can't be used in the public internet. It's private, and private certificates are an additional charge. Next, we'll talk about the Amazon Inspector, because somebody recently asked about it. Amazon Inspector is an automated security assessment service that helps improve the compliance of your applications. What Amazon Inspector does, it assesses your applications for exposure vulnerabilities and deviations from best practices. So, we talked about before, we looked against deviations from your configs. Inspector uses deviations from what they deemed as best practice. So keep that in mind. And after you perform the assessment, Inspector will give you a list of detailed security findings by security level. But remember, this is an automated list. So what you get could be useful or completely useless. And it's up to you, the architect, to say, this matters, this matters, this matters. Nope, trash, nope, trap. In medicine, we call it artifact, when we basically get alerts and messages that look like they're bad, but they're really not. But keep that in mind. With any automated service like Inspector, you will get a lot of false positives, and you're also going to miss problems that occur as well, but they're helpful. So each one of these things is part of that other layer. So when you're dealing with security, it's like an onion. Get past the firewall, get past the IDS system, get past the access list, get past the security groups, get past the host-based firewall, get past the locked instance, get past the IAM. You want to make it hard. So let's talk about Macie as the next security service. Macie is a fully managed data security and data privacy service that uses machine learning and pattern matching techniques to discover and protect your sensitive data. Macie automatically provides an inventory of S3 buckets, including unencrypted buckets, public accessible buckets, and buckets shared outside of your organization. Now, mind you, S3 buckets are one of the primary reasons organizations get hacked. 16% of all hacking attacks occur on properly insecured, misconfigured S3 buckets. So Macie is a solution to people not knowing what they're doing when they're configuring things and helping to find people that made private stuff public. So keep that in mind. Macie can apply some machine learning and pattern matching techniques to identify you of things that's like personally identifiable information. Okay, so what we're going to do is as follows. We're going to take about 5 minutes of questions, 5 to 10 minutes of questions. Then we're going to cover the following: how to build a high availability network the way you need to for your certification exam. Now, I'll tell you how to do it for a real life too, because you need that as a cloud architect, but it's an AWS certification. So we'll tell you the AWS way to do it, because we have to, because AWS is not going to want to hear on the certification exam about your multi-cloud architectures, because they want to keep you all on their cloud. No cloud provider wants to share the money with other cloud providers, so they're going to show you how to do it all on their cloud. We cloud architects are about transforming our customers' business, which means giving our customers the best business solutions. So that's our world, optimize our customers. So you can't be pro AWS, you can't be pro Google, you can't be pro Azure, you can't be pro anybody. You need to be pro customer. That's the job of the architect, a fair, neutral, impartial, executive specialist that can help a company transform them things, especially if you're going to be at a big four consulting firm, especially if you're going to be at a global bank, especially if you're going to be at a global company. You're going to need people that are vendor neutral. Now, if you're working at AWS, sure, you're going to be proposing AWS solutions, but overall, you need to know. So, Chris, you want to bring in some questions? So, Angela, exactly what's going to happen when you're using a content delivery network, if it's not there when you hit your point of presence, it's going to ride the CloudFront content delivery network back as opposed to the internet. That's why it's going to be faster. Exactly. Great question. Chris, bring in the next one. Lambda functions are Lambda equals Azure functions, Cloud functions. Exactly. Same basic thing. Chris from my team is looking for some of the next questions. He's got a lot of them. So we're super excited for all what Chris is doing behind the scenes. You have to understand he's got hundreds of comments and things popping around. Daniel Jackson, do we run a mentorship class? Absolutely. That is what our Cloud Architect Career Development Program is. We have 2 live classes per week where we discuss leadership skills, present, do practice interviews, architectural designs, and talk about how to interview and all that's necessary to really turn you into a great cloud architect. That's what we do, and that's how we mentor things in our live training elements, which are twice per week. Now, in between our live classes, Daniel Jackson, we have students turn in videos of themselves, build career development plans, design architectures, build their own clouds from scratch, etc., etc. And they turn those things into Slack for feedback. And the same way you see a bunch of blue wrenches over here, we've got hundreds of people and well over 500, almost 600 people spread throughout the world in this program, and they work together. You can see Eva Doikia and Abigail Marks and Chow and Jazz that's on there, all those blue wrenches. I can tell you, they're working constantly, studying with each other, learning from each other. It's the greatest thing. And hundreds of my students all over the world collaborate constantly from building clouds together. It's a really amazing thing. And then we've got our lab components. But at all times, students can ask questions via the in-person classes, and at all times, the students can ask questions via Slack, because we can't ever assume someone can just watch a video and get an education. It doesn't work that way. We have to make sure that you learn ready to be hired, that you've got the resume to be hired, the negotiation skills, the business skills, the leadership skills, the communication skills, the presence skills, and of course the architecture skills. But that's only half the job. 60% of the job or more is that other stuff. So yes, we definitely run a mentorship class. It's called our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. And Chris from my team can give you a link to the course along with a 20% coupon. And you can ask some of my students on the call. I'm going to ask it. Students on my call, are you having a good time in the Cloud Architect Career Development Program? If you are, put it in the chat box. The students that are mine that are in the chat box. Now, I don't know what they're going to say, but my students, I love them, and I know they work really hard together. So if my students are willing to talk about how much fun they're having, we'd love to have that. So it looks like some of the things are there. Love to work with you if you desire, but we definitely do have a mentorship class. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. What are the advantages, disadvantages of using Lambda versus running scripts on EC2 instances? If you've got the perfect scripts running on your EC2 instances and you want to use them on any cloud, perfect. AWS would tell you the advantage of using Lambda is you don't have to set up a virtual machine. That's it. So, keep it in mind. That's what we're talking about. Thank you, students, for responding to those questions. So that's the difference. You can run your scripts in the data center on a virtual machine. You can run them all. It really doesn't matter. Essay, how do you overcome vendor-specific application in a multi-cloud private environment? We don't use any vendor-specific anything. So if I'm going to use a database, I'll use an Oracle database or a MySQL database or a Postgres database. Or if I need no SQL, it'll be Apache Cassandra or Mongo DB based upon the read-write activities and what my application, my big data architects think. So, I'm not going to use Elastic anything service. I'm going to use things on virtual machines. So for the most part, it's just a matter of using industry standard things on every single cloud. Don't use WAF. Use an industrial grade firewall from Cisco or Palo Alto. It's going to be better, stronger in every way, and it works multi-cloud. So it's an issue of just don't use anything that's vendor proprietary, and you'll never have this problem ever again. And that's what big businesses do. Chris, if you want to add one or two more. What is the name of the video recognition service? Recognition spelled with a K instead of the C. Great question there. Chris, want to bring in the next one?
All right, I don't have any more questions. Amazing comments from everybody. But
okay, so whoever's leaving comments, I'd like to thank you. I'll actually look at themselves. Thank you so much, Amra. Jamal, thank you so much. Eva Doikya, thank you so much for both the brew wrenches, your kind words, and contributing everything you do to the Go Cloud Architect family. Same with you, Nike. Always a pleasure, and thank you so much. Can you email us? Of course you can email us at elitetechcareers@gmail.com. You can also call our office at +1. What's that?
We're going to give them the company email address.
Absolutely. You're going to text it?
I'm typing it.
Okay, perfect. We're going to type the company email address for you, Daniel Jackson, because I want you to be completely successful in everything you do.
And what's that number again?
Our number?
Yeah, you started to give it up.
Oh, the phone number, +1 973 896 4889. Thank you so much, Gene. How can you secure the Lambda function output? The same way you secure anything else. Firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, network access control lists, security groups, IAM, etc., etc. Chris, you can bring in the next one if you like. Derek is also amazing. Thank you so much. I love having you working with you. Val Winder, she's amazing. Love it. Can appreciate it. Derek, you're having a great time. Thanks so much. Robert Welch is a great cloud security architect. Thanks so much. Nikhil, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for every nice thing you do all the time. Val Winder, we created a family here. Thank you so much. KCast, loving this. Okay, I'm loving this. So Kemi, thank you so much for your kind words. So let's talk about building a high availability system. So first I'll tell you what you should do, and then I'll tell you what you need to do to pass this exam. So this is what we're talking about. If you want a high availability system, do not use a single cloud. If you put all your eggs in one basket, I promise you it's inevitable. You will have an outage, and it will be a big, big, big outage. In networking, we've told our customers for 3 decades, never use a single provider. Never use a single service provider. We tell people for 3 years not to do it. And here's why. We have 2 things that go on. Let's say you buy something, and you have 2 cables from 2 different service providers. You've got 2 connections. If the top connection is on Verizon, and the bottom connection is on AWS, if the top one goes, the bottom one's still good. Now, in the AWS theory, and what they're going to tell you next, you can just be in 2 availability zones. And that way, if availability zone 1 goes away, you still have availability zone 2. And in theory, this is 100% true. The problem is if the orchestration of the control plane for the systems go down, that's what happens. You lose both connections. So if the systems get hacked, you lose both connections. If there's a network problem, you lose both connections. So as you can see, there's no way to intelligently architect high availability on a single cloud. You can use all the regions and multiple availability zones for region and one control plane failure hacking event, or network failure that's substantial, and you're done across all your availability zones and regions. So I don't ever recommend a single cloud provider unless you're dealing with a customer that's making Cindy the Cat websites. Cindy the Cat's beautiful, but if it's not mission critical, sure, use a single cloud provider. If it matters and you're dealing with a large global enterprise customer, I would never use a single cloud provider. So keep that in your mind. But now we have to go past the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate exam. So let's talk about how to design it the AWS way. So here's the thing. To do it the AWS way, these are what they're going to say. So the designing for availability can be costly depending upon it. And that's true anywhere. And we're typically going to talk about several levels of availability. And I'll show you what they mean. We'll talk about 99% availability, which is not available at all, because 99% available means 3.65 days of downtime per year. Not so good. So the next level of performance availability, which AWS says is what you can get in a single availability zone, which is 99.9% availability. That is terrible. That means that you can expect 8.76 hours of outages from a single availability zone per year. Unplanned outages, almost 9 hours, a whole business day. How much could 9 hours cost a company like Facebook? 9 hours cost them about $8 billion. So that's why nobody should ever use a single availability zone unless it's a website for cindythecat.com, who she's beautiful. She cleans her hair real nice. She's got little hand things, little paw things, lots of fun. But unless you want a Cindy the Cat website, a single availability zone would be ridiculous because you're already planning in with a single availability zone 9 hours of downtime per year. So still not good. Now, if you want better availability than that, you can do 2 availability zones. That will get you to 99.99% of the time. What does that mean? Basically, a little less than an hour of downtime per year. Can you tolerate that? I don't know. What does an hour of downtime cost in a bank that's running algorithmic trading? 30, 40, 50, $100 million? Can the bank tolerate that? I don't know. Depends on the bank. What about a hospital system with 2 availability zones? All your medical systems are on the cloud. 2 availability zones, and assuming it works perfectly, you get an hour's worth of downtime per year. Somebody can die in that 1 hour. It's not good enough. How about a 911 dispatcher? Hello, I need help. Busy signal because the network's down. Not good enough. So if it matters, well, first, don't use a single cloud. But if it matters, 2 availability zones still isn't good enough because that's only 4 nines, which is not good. That's an hour of unplanned downtime per year. So now what are we trying to achieve? If it really matters, we're looking for 5 nines availability. And this is what your banks need. This is what your service providers need, like an AT&T. This is what your hospitals need. This is what your 911 dispatch centers need. Because remember, systems go down, people will die. So it's not good. Systems go down, people die. Keep that in the back of your mind. So when we're dealing with that, we have to get serious. Now, it's not serious to assume we can use multiple availability zones and still have high availability, and even multiple regions to do it, because we've seen it. AWS has proven to us this year they can't do it. Now, we told people forever you could never do it, and it was insane, but AWS has proven it to us. This year, they have had multiple outages across multiple regions and multiple availability zones at the same time. And why? Because it's got a single network, a single control plane. And that's the problem. So there's that. So if you're going to do it the AWS way and you want high availability, you need for like critical availability, meaning 3 nines, 1 availability zone, 4 nines, 2 availability zones, 5 nines, 2 regions, and 2 availability zones each. Minimum. But a lot goes into high availability. So let's talk about what it takes to build a high availability system. So no single points of failure. No single points of failure. What does that mean? You will never find a data center that only has 1 source of power coming in. You will have 2 sources of power. You will have generators, in some cases backup generators, and you will have batteries. Why? Because we don't have data centers that have power outages, because if they do, and it's a hospital, for example, people will die. If it's a bank, millions of dollars will be lost. There's no such thing as a data center that has bad power. So in a high availability system design, like data center design, you have multiple sources of power. Now let's think about what else do you need. Now you're building a data center, whether it's an availability zone or regular data center. These systems generate a lot of heat. So you know what you have? Redundant cooling system, because here's what's going to happen. If your air conditioner burns out and another air conditioner doesn't kick in, your servers will get too hot. They won't perform well. Some of them will cook, burn up, and die, and the organization is going to buy more. So no single points of failure. Redundant power, redundant cooling. Now your network devices. You don't just have a single router that connects to the edge. You've got multiple routers to connect to the edge. Why? 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is better than 2. Now the routers you use, when you read the AWS books, they're like, oh, here, it'll auto-generate a configuration. Here's your $3,000 router. You're not doing that. You need high availability routers and multiple routers. You need multiple switches. And each switch should have multiple brains in it, multiple line cards, multiple power supplies that go into multiple power circuits across different power distribution units, all on different generators. So if a power outage happens on one generator, the systems that are critically important are plugged into another outlet. So if a circuit breaker blows, you're not down. This goes into all normal high availability designs. I've never seen a data center that didn't do it. And quite frankly, in 25 years, I've never seen a data center that had a power failure, ever. Why? Except for a hurricane after 3 days when they ran out of diesel fuel. Why? Because data centers are redundant. So keep that in the back of your mind. So your switches are redundant, your servers are redundant. You can't have one server, you have two. You don't have a single load balance, you've got redundant load balancers. DNS, you're pointing to multiple places. Storage, it's kind of copied in multiple places. Your applications, your databases, spread out. Copies, 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 copies. So what are we talking about? Multiple everything. Multiple everything. And yes, when you deal with cloud providers, there are something called the service level agreement. We guarantee this. But what happens when they don't do it? They could give you some finances back. Now think about it. If you're using a single cloud provider, we guarantee you 5 nines by doing this, and you're running a 911 emergency dispatch system, and the systems go down, someone calls 911 and somebody dies, there is no repaying that back. None. And if you use 2 availability zones, 2 regions for a bank, and the bank loses $500 million during the outage, and AWS says, oh, here's your $50,000 penalty because we didn't meet your goals. Again, they're not reimbursing that $50 million. Look, there was another company, a big social media giant that had an outage. It cost them over $8 billion, and their name was changed after that. I don't know whether it's due to brand damage or they intentionally planned on moving things. That's the kind of things that happen when your systems go down. It can destroy a company in a matter of minutes. So, want to put all your eggs in one basket or not? Well, this is what you do. No single points of failure. So right there, you can't use one cloud. But we talked about 2 availability zones qualifying as 99.99%, and 2 regions with 2 availability zones per region, meaning 99.99%, if you want to count it that way. So it's up to you and how you design it. But if the single tenant and the most primary thing of high availability is no single points of failure, and you use a single cloud, you got a single point of failure. So it's up to you. So building high availability systems. When we made these slides years ago, or a year or 2 ago, we made them that you could trust AWS because they have redundant power and redundant cooling. Well, either they don't have redundant power and cooling and they're the only data center in the entire world that doesn't, or something else happened other than a power outage, and we'll never know. But building a high availability system, we have to assume that AWS has reliable redundant power, because if they don't, we can't use them, because no data center we can use that's just going to have a power outage. So we're going to assume that AWS has redundant power. We're going to assume they have redundant cooling. And I know they do for a fact because I know people that work there. We're going to assume they have hundreds of connections to the internet and thousands of connections across their backbone. We're going to assume they've got lots of redundant routers and switches, and I know for a fact they do. And here's the thing, theoretically speaking, when you do that in a data center, we have to do all of this. So when we went to the cloud providers, we're outsourcing them because we know they're experts at the power, the cooling. Well, they are. Of course, they just told us they had a power failure and it took down multiple data centers at the same time. So who knows? But the reality is all data centers have redundant power. So let's talk about best practices the AWS way. Multi-AZ is effectively using multiple data centers, but they're all connected on the same network. So keep that in mind. And if you need over 99.99%, you must use multi-region and multiple availability zones. Anything that needs to be important, you should have in multiple availability zones. Computers, databases, load balancers, etc., etc. 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is greater than 2. So what does it mean in terms of networking connections? Redundant connections. So for most people, you have a direct connection and a VPN backup. Okay, let's talk about these connections. You can't have a direct connection from AT&T and an AT&T internet connection to the cloud. Why? Because if AT&T goes down, you're done. Again, in networking, we never use the same service provider for both connections, because if the cloud provider goes down, service provider goes down, you're done. So we might have one router that connects to the cloud on AWS, AT&T, and another router that connects to the cloud on Verizon. And by doing that, if Verizon goes down, we still have AT&T. So remember that. Our connections to the cloud need to be redundant. On redundant routers or separate routers or multiple routers, and we're using different service providers. We can't use the same service provider, because if they have a problem, poof, they're done. So kind of keep that. So for most people, it'll be a direct connection for their primary link and a VPN backup. But organizations might need a primary direct connection. They might need secondary direct connections and then VPN backups. And what is that determined by? The business requirement. What does a minute of downtime cost the business? What does productivity losses cost the business? If it costs less, if it costs more to have downtime than it does to not have downtime, then you're going to have redundant connections. And the level of redundancy will be based upon the cost of downtime and its impact to your business. So make sure your connections are on multiple service providers. Now, this is what AWS would tell you would be a typical high availability set of connections to AWS, direct connection and VPN backup. That's what they would show you. Here's what we would do for the kind of customers that I work with. I would have 2 separate routers connecting to 2 separate direct connection locations, and I would have them both going to a different virtual gateway in 2 different regions or 2 different availability zones, and then I would have a VPN backup. Now, that's really what I would do. And of course, this would be on AT&T and Verizon, or NTT and CenturyLink, or whatever, based upon my geographic region. Apologies, I wasn't sharing this. This is what I would design. And of course, I would use multiple clouds. But the point is, we'd be using 2 different direct connections to 2 different direct connection locations to 2 different virtual gateways across 2 different availability zones. And that's what we're doing. And by doing that, now we're in the world of high performance, high availability systems. This is what AWS would tell you to do, is just get a simple direct connection to VPN backup. And again, that might be appropriate for certain places, but not other places. So keep that in your mind. What determines this? Your business requirements. So if we want high availability, what do we have to protect against? Well, what could cause our systems, like our control plane, to go down? We could be hacked, and that could take down a data center, or it could take down an entire network. So what's critical? Security requirements. If our systems are not secure, do you think they're available? No, because I promise you, I can find you lots of hackers that will take down your non-secured systems almost immediately. So what do you do when you build your systems? Use the principle of least privilege, meaning need to know. Disable all unnecessary services. Patch your systems with new security updates. Divide your systems by using AWS organizations, so one thing doesn't affect another thing. Protect your subnets with the network ACLs. Protect your hosts with security groups. Use firewalls, whether it be WAF or whether you get a real enterprise firewall solution with network load balancers, front-ending next generation firewalls, such as those from Cisco, Checkpoint, Palo Alto, or Fortinet. These are the kind of things that are really, really there. So kind of keep that in your possession. So, use your IDS, IPS systems. If you're not using a next generation firewall, use DDoS protection. Physical security. You need to lock up the routers and switches where your things are there. What kind of security do you need? It depends on what assets you're protecting. Do you need regular security? Do you need cameras? Do you need human security? Do you need armed security? Do you need armed security that's specialty, like they were Navy SEALs in their last life, or SAS commandos, or Israeli commandos? What kind of security do you need? What kind of passwords or keys are you going to use? And the key is, template your good configurations, the things that are where they're supposed to be, and keep them. Have your DevOps engineers keep that stuff in Terraform templates. So if anything bad happens, you can redeploy pretty quickly. Keep backups of your configurations. Now, what else goes into high availability? Let's talk about backups. Now, disaster recovery is not just about data. It's about keeping your systems up and running. But here's the thing. Data is something that's concerning because one of the business's most critical things is its data, the information that it's received, the information that it's learned over the last few years. That's what we're talking about. So backup, backup, backup. What do you back up? Well, back up your virtual machine images, back up images of every server you have, back up all your data and put it in two locations. One secure location and ideally on another cloud or tapes that are shipped offsite or something. Don't put all your eggs in one backup area, including your backup. So create images of everything. How else can you bump up your availability? Well, on the cloud, we've got some good things. One of the things that takes systems down is DDoS attacks or overuse. CPU hits 100% and we can't do anything. But on the cloud, we've got auto scaling. So enable it. In networking, we create this core access and distribution layer, and we've done it for years. Why? If something happens in this part of the network, if we're really smart, we isolate it. Now, we used to go from core distribution and access, and now they're basically doing spine and leaf, which is like removing that layer. And by removing the decoupling, we're now seeing network problems in one location affect another one. So decouple your architectures. Use caching to offload your services. Use DNS and load balancers because they have health checks. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? I'm here. I'm here. Dead. Okay, only send it here and here. Use your health checks. Use your caching. Use your DNS. Watch what's going on. Log it. Watch it in real time. Use logging functions. Monitor for systems alerts. Look for security breaches. Monitor system usage and monitor system performance. Why? It's so critical. If you don't know what's going on, you won't be able to catch it when it occurs. And if you can't catch it when it occurs, guess what? Problems, 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 and more problems. Now, the last part of this, and I love to ask people on an interview, what goes into 5 nines availability? And if they don't tell me change management, I know they read a book, passed a certification exam, but they have zero knowledge of high availability. Here's what change management is. I've got Chow, Abigail, and they're the two people that I can see with the blue wrenches next to them right now. They're both doing stuff. Now, in a 5 nines available network, we can only tolerate 5 minutes of downtime. I need everybody to know. So if I want to make a change, I have to ask my chief feline officer, who's Cindy the cat. I ask Abigail, because she's got the blue wrench, and I ask Chow. They're both department heads in my organization for today. And I say, Chow, in your organization, if I make this change, will it affect you? And she'll say, no. Abigail, if I make this change, will it affect you? And she'll say, no. Cindy the cat, chief feline officer, if I make this change and she says, purr, I know it's good. If she says meow, I know I can't make the change. Why? Any change that I make could affect Abigail. And if my change affects Abigail's systems, I took her down, we lost my availability. If my systems affected Cindy the cat's ability to basically take her nap, she's angry and she's going to bite me. And that's no good because that would cause an outage. Same thing for Abigail or Chow. I can ask them what they want. And then we get together and we coordinate it. I discuss the proposed changes. They say, guess what? Everything's going to be fine. And because of that, we're all happy. Now, otherwise, I made the change. I didn't ask Chow, the chief feline officer, or Abigail. I make a change, and Abigail's down. She's not going to be happy with me, and we lost our 5 nines availability for the year. So change management. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on passing the exam, and I'm going to give you some recommendations. Download our completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate book. I strongly recommend that. Watch this course. Watch the more certification-oriented version of this course that we did, which was pure certification. And again, you can see that on our channel. If you want to add to that, we recommend one of two things. Haman Sharma from Review and Prep has some fantastic practice exams and they're relatively inexpensive. Or if you're looking for another source, we love Andrew Brown from Exam Pro. He's a friend. He's got a very good pure certification training course. And while mine is more about teaching you architecture, His is more about passing the exam. His course is free. I think it's like $20 and you get his practice test and his course. So pretty much saying you can do that. But you can rewatch this boot camp as well as the other one, and it's going to get you really, really far. And you have our free ebooks. And many people have just used our free boot camp or our free book alone to pass the exam. But people always say, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Since we are 80% focused on the career side, Andrew Brown is 100% focused on the certification side. That's what his business does, certification training. He's a good friend. We love his product. So combine the two and you'll be there. But of course, rewatch this. Tell your friends to rewatch this. Come back and do it 3-4 times. You'll learn stuff. We densely pack our training. So we covered in this time. Others would spend 3 times the time because we're dense on how we discuss it. Because that's what you have to be with executives. So the exam can be a little bit challenging. And what I mean by that is they ask the questions in a very ridiculous way. So real wordy, poor grammar, and there's not always a clear best answer because most of the time, most of your answers aren't going to be too good at all. So, keep that in your mind. So you're going to have to select the best of the answers. Realize that one might be the way VMware does it. One might be the Google way, and one might be the AWS way. So remember who wrote the exam. It's an AWS exam. Now, the last kind of recommendations I'm going to give you is is as follows. When you read our book, I want you to read it very carefully. I'm an executive and was trained to write like an executive for executives. And what we put in one paragraph, others will babble for 4 to 5 pages. So read our stuff with attention to detail because we've got a lot of content in a short period of space to give you the best experience to get you cloud hired as fast as possible. Read some of the AWS white papers that are out there. Guess what? They pull a lot of the questions from the white papers. And remember, it's an AWS exam. It's not an architecture exam. It's an AWS exam. So be prepared for the AWS exam. Get a practice test like the one from Hum and Sharma at reviewandprep.com. It's excellent. Reviewandprep.com. Or take Andrew Brown's course from Exam Pro in addition to this, in addition to mine. That way you've got a lot of stuff pulling it from lots of good places. Andrew Brown's free CCNA is excellent. His is more certification. Ours is more teach you the job. Combine those two and you've got a nicer package. So kind of can do that. And his course is free. So it's extra training. And we're good friends. On that practice success, keep taking it until you can score a 95 every single time. And when you can, then it's time to schedule an exam. If you're getting a practice exam that's got thousands of questions in it, by the time you can score a 95, you're ready. And I don't want you to ever take an exam and not pass. Pass the first time. Pass. Succeed. And lastly, the day before the exam. The biggest challenge on these exams is not the content. The content's simple. The biggest challenge on the exam is as follows. Reading these ridiculously written questions. So the night before, get some sleep. Eat healthy. Don't drink any wine. Don't drink any alcohol. And don't take any substances that can affect your judgment on the next day. Arrive to the exam early. The hardest part of this exam is going to be reading these questions because they're poorly written. So get there early. For the average person, if their heart rate goes above 115 due to stress, they're not there. Different for athletes. So we deal with this situation. There's basically 5 levels of alert that we would talk about in a military context. There's white alert, and white alert is the person that's just sitting there walking through the parking lot, texting on their phone. And you have to work really hard not to hit them with their car. So don't be there. There's the yellow alert, which you typically see in warrior trained people and martial artists like me. We're walking around, we're scanning, we're paying attention. Why? We don't get surprised. Then there's the orange alert, which is like we're getting ready to act, and red alert, we're ready to fight. The only problem is there's this condition called black. And condition black is what happens when you get scared or you're overwhelmed to the point, and then we get stupid temporarily. So when we get stressed, we get dumb. And here's the reason why. We're here talking right now. We're using the prefrontal cortexes for our brain, and we're having a good time. The thinking, the logical reasoning, the fun part of our brain. If we get stressed, the prefrontal cortex shuts off. The amygdala kicks in. That's that nasty reptilian part of our brain. It's not real smart, which means you might say things to people you regret, and you're certainly not going to have the ability, if that reptilian brain's in, to read these questions that are poorly written and still interpret them. So show up 30 minutes early. I promise you, Something can happen. You run into a parking problem. You're taking it home and your computer crashes. My $12,000 Mac Pro crashed on multiple exams because they install weird softwares on your computer. You show up and they're not there and running on time. So give yourself time. Get there 30 minutes ready, whether it's at home or somewhere else. And that way you're relaxed. And when they get there, you've got your water next to you. You just take your exam, you pass your exam and succeed. Win, 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 win. Don't show up without a valid photo ID. I've seen people do it so many times. They're all ready, they're all prepared, they've studied, they got to pay, and they can't even take it because they forgot their ID. So I don't want any of those things happening to you. I want you to go out there, knock out this certification, keep learning about the cloud, learn the business acumen, the communication skills, the emotional intelligence, the leadership, executive presence, system design, and I want sales, negotiation, business development, executive writing and presenting. I want you to do that. And I want you to get cloud hired. So I want you all cloud hired. So let's ask last questions for the day. Let's celebrate the fact that we've covered a fantastic week. And we've got so much more for you. So free subnetting webinar, please sign up. Free ebook, please sign up. Free chance to interview, please sign up. Or watch interviews and gather intel, please sign up. Free chance to go pretend to be a cloud architect today and see if you find out what it takes, please sign up. So let's bring in some questions, Chris. Cami, absolutely. There's something called the service level agreement, which is a penalty, which is typically part of the contract with every major service provider, meaning there's a financial penalty if they don't meet the needs that they promised you. And while that's great, Kemi, if a hospital used AWS and AWS had a power failure, which affected multiple systems, and somebody died, AWS might say, here's your $50,000 for your outage penalty, but they're not going to reimburse the hospital for the $50 million lawsuit that came from somebody using AWS, which had a power failure. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. They will reimburse you to some degree based upon a service level agreement, but the catastrophic nature of an outage could result in death or destruction or loss of billions of dollars for the right customer, and AWS is never going to come close to paying anything like that back. So use one cloud provider at your own risk, which I didn't mean, don't do it. How do you use the labs? Well, if you're going to do AWS labs, you do them in the AWS account. You get one, it's completely free. And all the labs that we have, which Chris is going to drop some more later today, are completely free. So what are the major differences between high availability and disaster recovery? They're completely unrelated. Availability means, are your systems available when you need them? Which means, are they there all the time? Are they there most of the time? Or are they there some of the time? That's availability. Disaster recovery is completely different. Disaster recovery is if you're on the AWS cloud, the Azure cloud, and the Google cloud, and they all shut down tomorrow, how do you stay in business? That's disaster recovery. So availability means exactly here, right here, at the time being functional. Whereas disaster recovery is more about if I'm using 4 data centers in California, and California had an earthquake and fell out to sea, how do we get the business back and running if the employees were all in California? What do we need to do? Who do we need to hire? Who do we need to bring in? Where's the data? Where's the new servers? What's the plans to restore the business? That's disaster recovery. And disaster recovery, again, is much more about business information than just data. So that's kind of the big difference, but it's a fantastic question. So disaster recovery could potentially improve your availability, but realistically speaking, they're a second thing and we don't categorize them together. But fantastic question, Bonnet Eagle. Glad you asked it. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Oh, by the way, if you're having a good time, if you can hit the like, comment, subscribe, all those other things, we really appreciate it. How long is the CCNA class? We're still figuring out how we're going to do that. And here's the reason why. An AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional is about 500 pages of content. The CCNA basic content is about 2,000 pages of content. And a Cisco Certified Network Professional, which would be the equivalent of the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, is between 6,000 and 10,000 pages of content. And a CCI like me had to read about 75,000 pages of content to do it. So if we do when we do the CCNN class, we're going to probably do 3 to 4 hours a day for 2 weeks straight, because it's going to take that much to actually do it. It's much deeper, much more significant content than the Certified Solution Architect Professional. And it's about 8 times deeper than the AWS Advanced Networking. So we like the AWS Advanced Networking. We'll periodically do them because they're basically how to do the networking stuff. But the CCNA is going to be a lot deeper. So I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage everybody to go to it. And Chris, you can bring in the next one. Do we have anything tomorrow? Thankfully, tomorrow is a free day for you cloud architects to read the books, do anything you want, and have a fantastic time. We scheduled an extra day because I didn't know. I think we had about 20,000 people attend this week when we actually looked at all the numbers. But, you know, if it was 100,000 people, which sometimes things are for us, we knew we might need extra days because we'd be answering extra questions. So we don't need to use that extra bonus day tomorrow. So you're all free to go to the beach if you live in the South like me, or go skiing, snowing, studying. Just make sure you have a great day tomorrow, Rajesh. Make it a wonderful day. How do you practice the labs in our book? Sign up for a free AWS account and do them. While you're at it, sign up for a free Google account and do them. The instructions won't be the same, but it'll be the same thing to do. Sign up for a free Azure account and do them, and sign up for a free Oracle account and do them too. Understand how these things work. But Rajesh, remember, the hands-on piece is much more for the cloud engineers than the cloud architects, but we still have to learn how to do them in the first place. But yes, go out there and have a ball. Chris, you want to bring in the next one? Tasha, thanks a lot. I understand Mike does not recommending going through the 7,500 pages. However, do you still provide a list of recommended books to read? Dasha, if you attend my free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, I will give you the list of the 30 or 40,000 pages that are necessary to be a cloud architect. If you choose not to take our program, I will tell you the business books, the training courses, the negotiation courses, the presentation skills courses, and I will give you a list of all those courses and things to do. You'll be able to do it via courses or reading. Reading is going to be 30 to 50,000 pages. Courses, if you don't take ours, will get relatively expensive because we do it mostly as a charity with our courses. The way we priced it that way, we picked a price that was really designed for India and Africa, and we charge that price to our Americans as well because we don't believe it's fair to charge different prices to people in different parts of the world. So we picked a low price for our training that would work India and Africa and other parts of the developing world, like me, where I'm from Greece. So that's what I do. I don't not recommend reading those 75 pages. I recommend reading them. But I'm saying if you're not willing to read the 30 to 50,000 pages, or you're not willing to spend the $30,000 to $50,000 of training, which is what it would cost if we recommend the training for you, you could take our courses. So we never don't recommend reading. We always recommend reading. But what we did is we took that 30 to 40,000 pages or 50,000 pages and we whittled it down to 500 hours of training for our students. So yes, if you attend our free thing, we'll tell you all the courses to take and all the books to read on our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. Absolutely. Or like Cloud Hire. Absolutely. When do you get a hands-on webinar? Dave, the question is, what career do you want? So hands-on for the architect is going to be an architectural design webinar, which is what we're offering you completely free next week. Now, if you're a cloud engineer, hands-on is clicking boxes in the management console. And we gave you a free lab video on Tuesday, and we're giving you a free lab video later today that Chris is going to upload for my team. But if you're looking for real-time architecture stuff, that's why I invited you to the free Cloud Architect Experience Challenge webinar. Because remember, hands-on for cloud architects is completely different than hands-on for engineers. Hands-on for architects is design. Hands-on for engineers is building. So you have to tell us which career you want, because the hands-on practice is going to be very, very, very different. Mervyn, thank you so much. We really appreciated having you here. Loved it. So please join us for more free events. Thanks, Mike and team. Yes, thank you, team. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. God bless you as well and your loved ones. Really love the chance to really educate the world and try and share the skills developed over the last 25 years. I want to generate the next world of, what do you call it? The next generation of technology leaders. And then I'm going to do what I do, which is practice Ashtanga yoga on the beach in Jamaica. Dasha, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Nike is amazing as well. Bob, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bob. Jamal, amazing student you are. It's always a pleasure to have you around, and thank you so much. We've got a lot more to do with that CCNA. Dasha, thank you so much. I really want to help so many people. I'm really grateful for your attending. Derek, always wonderful to have you here. Rajesh, thank you so much. We're trying as hard as we can to really spread our content and to spread training and education to anybody that needs it anywhere in the world. Oh, Abigail, good to see you, Cloud Hired. Georgetta, absolutely. Please rewatch Cat Hired 2, Cloud Hired, Cloud Architect. Actually, if you guys don't mind popping in some Cloud Architects and some Cloud Hires, it's kind of like music to my ears. Every day you stay up till 3 o'clock to enjoy this. I'm honored and privileged to have you here. I bow to you. Namaste. Robert Welch, always great to see you. Abigail, Chris, Mike, and the Blue Wrenches, including you, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for your help. And Chow, thank you for making this such an amazing thing. Every time I see your face and smile in class, it's magnetic. It lights up the room, and I'm thrilled you're here. Thanks so much, Pierre. Same to you as well. Let's get Cloud Hired. Exactly, Chow. Let's get everybody Cloud Hired. That's why she's one of my Blue Wrenches. Kay Cass, super grateful to have you here. Yes, we have a date for the CCNA. Chris from my team can actually post the date of the CCNA directly on the stream because he literally tells me a lot of the times where I actually have to go. And that's exactly what I do. Cecilia, so nice to see you. Thrilled you're here. Cloud Hired. Yes, Cloud Hired. That's music to my ears.
It will start the week of the 24th.
Okay, on the week of the 24th, that is the CCNA. I so appreciate anytime somebody calls me Guruji, so thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. And Nike, well, every single time I speak to you, I smile. I'm Marla as well. And Balwinter, actually. Jamal, yes, thanks all those Blue Wrenches for the support. Thank all the Blue Wrenches. Can you shortly explain the difference between a solution architect and a cloud engineer? Sure, Francois. So, and Chris, if you leave this here for 30 seconds, as an architect, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the customer, physically or virtually, usually physically for the first time, but right now virtually. I'm going to ask them to tell me about their business. I'm going to ask them about telling me their business goals, their pain points, their business challenges. I'm going to look up their financial statements. I'm going to read their balance sheets. I'm going to generate some hypotheses of what I see that's wrong. I'm going to go to industry analysts, etc. Then I'm going to go with the account manager to the customer. We're going to ask these questions, figure out some ideas. Then I'm going to come up with some ideas that I think are going to work, and I'm going to map them out. New website, or for example, a new unified communications technology to enhance collaboration, new process redesign. From there, then I'm going to say for this new website, what do I need? Load balancers, virtual machines, databases, etc. Where do I need to store it? Okay, I'm storing that on block storage. Okay, now what do I do? I say, okay, I need a load balancer. I need it to be on 2 clouds. Okay, I'm going to use an Elastic load balancer for AWS and an Azure load balancer for Azure. Oh, wait, I need to put my web servers on virtual machines. Okay, I'm going to put them on EC2 instances of this size, and I'm going to put them on Azure virtual machines. Oh, wait, I've got multiple app servers. I'm going to use a load balancer called an Elastic load balancer with AWS. Wait, I'm on Azure. I'm using Azure load balancer. Okay, I'll use some more virtual machines. Now for my databases. I need a transactional database. Guess what? Oracle is going to have the features, functions in its open standard, at least open enough. So I'm going to buy that and stick it on a virtual machine in AWS, and I'm going to use Oracle as a virtual machine on Azure. Poof, I'm done. Okay, what do my firewalls need to look like? I need 2 network load balancers in front of my 2 virtual firewalls. I also need some IDS systems, IPS systems. After that, I need this, I need this. That's what we do. We doll it all down, Francois, and then we write it up, and then we write it up in a document, which could be 3 pages for the executives and 300 pages for the people that are going to deploy it. We present it back to the customer, and we go back with our sales reps, and we sell it. We do an ROI model to show the customer that the value of our solution costs more than it costs. We present it, and then we're done. And when they say, yes, Michael, I want to do it, I say, okay, cloud engineering team, your turn. I get out of there, and I'm done. I'm on to the next customer. Now, after I've done that, Francois, the cloud engineer gets a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, it's going to say, do this. Now that cloud engineer is going to configure it. They might be writing code. They might be writing scripts. They might be using Terraform. They're going to be on that management console, on that CLI. They're going to be writing shell scripts. They're going to be configuring Linux things. They're going to be installing web servers. They're going to do it all. So the architect is the prima donna that gets paid double to go in there and talk and schmooze and sell and design. And the engineer is going to be the hardworking person that goes and builds all the things that that architect actually designed. So architects don't configure, architects don't code, architects don't do sysops or DevOps. And if you have that on your resume, too much of it, you won't even be hireable as an architect because they're going to see you as somebody else's career. Now that cloud engineer, this person does well with 2 or 3 certifications. This person does well with some Python. They should know bash scripting, any kind of PowerShell scripts and Windows. They should be real good with Linux. They should be good with hands-on configuration, CLI, etc. Totally different jobs. So Francois, I hope I helped you there and answered your question. Now here's the problem, Francois. When people want to be cloud architects and they're studying the hands-on, the CLI, the management console, Python, scripting, sysops, and DevOps, and they're not learning business acumen, leadership, emotional intelligence, sales, executive communication, CXO relevancy, ROI modeling, and then they go to interview for a job and that's what they're expecting. And they're like, here, I've done sysops and DevOps. The hiring manager's like, thanks. Are you looking for a sysops job? I know a maintenance person that's hiring. They're hiring a maintenance person. So they're all good careers and they're all valuable careers. And the engineer and the architect, they're not less than each other. I can design the most beautiful thing in the world, but if there's no engineer to build it, we've got nothing other than PowerPoint slides and beautifully written documents. So that's the difference, Francois. And that's the misconfusion that's causing so many thousands of people to get certified and not hired because we need totally different resumes. So you can join us for the Cloud Architect interview and the Cloud Architect Challenge, and you'll see a day in the life of the Cloud Architect. And I strongly invite you, and I'd love you to join us. Chris, bring in the next one. Cloud hired. Yes, cloud hired for you as well. And off to the beach. That sounds good. That sounds really fantastic. Tom Orpheus. So always wonderful seeing you. KCast, how many people change their tech careers to AWS cloud jobs? KCast, I have students that change their careers and get hired by AWS and other cloud providers and other consulting firms every single day. And I'll tell you, 2/3 of those people have never worked in tech in their entire life. They're career changers like me. I went from practicing medicine to tech many years ago, and you can do whatever you want to. Going from tech to cloud is easy if you write the business acumen, communication skills, emotional intelligence, leadership, etc., etc. But you can't go from tech to architect without studying those business and those leadership skills. Because remember, it's 50 to 60% non-tech the job. So keep that in the back of your mind. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Cloud hired Amrath. Derek, thank you. Mario, thank you. Balwendo, thank you. And the Blue Wrench team, yes. Dasha, thank you so much. Please spread the word about our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow it organically. We started about a year ago. We're now the busiest cloud computing channel. Oh, chill with the cat. Yes. After I do this, I'm headed to physical therapy, and then I'm going to go hang out with my cat. Thanks, Dean. Dave, I'm so appreciative that you're here. You say tonight. I'm looking at your name. I'm assuming I have some ideas where you're at. Anthony, so much. Cloud hired Mervin. Soga, yes, thank you, the Blue Wrench team. Eva Doikya, thank you, and Chow and Abigail and all of you, everybody that participated for everything, but especially those Blue Wrenches, thank you. And please share this boot camp for the fun. Yes, Chow, see, that's one of my students, and that's what I've tried to cultivate, and that's what my amazing students do to me every day. They just want to help everybody that's out there. Would you believe 49 of them are volunteering in Cameroon right now to help those in sub-Saharan Africa? I mean, I couldn't ask for a better family of students. We just get together. We do all these things to try and help people all over the world, and I'm grateful for them all. Mr. Gee, love that name. Are you a jiu-jitsu person? Cloud architect, Mr. Gee. Thank you so much. Abigail's one of my Blue Wrenches, one of my very special students, and thank you. Thank you, Mick B. Thank you, Eva Doikya. I don't even know where to begin to say nice things, and thank you. I'd love to help you in any way, change your career. You can do it. I have students do it every day. I went from medicine to lead architect within 6 months, and you can do it too. Just go after your dreams and love every bit of your life. Life is too short. I will tell you, I practiced medicine for a while. One thing that I've never seen somebody say to me on their deathbed is, I wish I had more money. But I've told people that I've had people say, wish I could have been in medicine and help people like you. I've had people say, I wish I did a different job. I didn't like what I did. I wish I'd been nicer to my family. So here's what I know. I want you and all of you to have a life of your dreams. I want you to do anything that makes you perfectly happy. And that's why we do this. So I'd love to work with you in any way, in any capacity. And thank you so much. Chris, if you get to the next one.
The next comment is why I like these sessions. I get great ideas.
Rajesh, that is an absolutely great idea about putting a calendar on our website. Fantastic idea. It's far better than me calling Chris at 10 o'clock at night. Hey, Chris, where do I have to be tomorrow? And he's like, you have to be here. And he's not my admin. He's my chief operating officer. But Chris does so much in the back end that he's scheduling some of these free events and building them and making the web pages that you can sign up that I can't even remember sometimes. So Rajesh, it's great. Chris, if we can add that to the list of things that we can figure out how to do at some point or hire somebody to do, is add a calendar to our website. What's the best way to share the upcoming boot camp with friends? Okay, let's do this. If you guys would help me, I made a LinkedIn post that advertises the next big boot camp. And if any of you guys are willing to like this post, which I'll post in the link, that will help so many other people actually find this boot camp. And I want to do anything we possibly can to help the whole world build their best career. So let me see if I can find this link.
While you're doing that, following our business page and following you.
Yes.
Because we just on LinkedIn, we're just constantly putting stuff out there. And if you follow us, you'll hopefully get notified when we make updates about different things.
Yeah. So actually, let's do that. Let's give everybody a link to follow us on the business page and my personal page. You're going to see a lot of stuff coming from me in the next week. For example, there's an article from a public magazine we're going to share. On Monday, we'll be on nationally syndicated radio talking about multi-cloud architectures, etc., and single points of failure and things like that. Later that day, we'll be on some other national media, and we'll be presenting at a tremendous number of industry conferences, and we'd like to get that content to you to help you all build your cloud careers. So I will give you a link to follow the business page, and where's that next window that I can pop it in? Okay, bear with me one second. Where is this? So I'll pop that link over here. Please follow our business page, and please follow me or connect to me. You know what? I will accept any connection requests that come in today from you guys, because you're all special to me now. And the reason you're all special to me now is as follows. How do we give people a means to follow me or connect to me?
Share the link to your page, just like
my
you did the company page.
Yeah, I don't see where I can do that over here.
Copy the URL. I'll take care of it.
Okay, so Chris is going to send you, please follow me. We're encouraging more people to follow us on LinkedIn, and by doing that, and then I will also find the link to today's post that will advertise the free CCNA training, because I don't want anybody missing out on that. I think it's really, really important to really make sure that everybody has the best career opportunities. So here's a link to that post. If you want to share the next free boot camp, we'd love you to do so. But please follow me as well. And here's the post. If you can like, comment, and share that post from LinkedIn, that will enable, realistically speaking, many, many, many more people to actually see the next free CCNA training. And we went into that. We've got like 1,000 slides with beautifully drawn pictures in Adobe InDesign to make it really, really great. We post to LinkedIn multiple times per day. So please like us. Please follow our business page, my personal page, because you're going to have a lot of free content we're going to be advertising. Especially LinkedIn. We're going to be doing much more on LinkedIn. So please join us. Please follow us. Thanks so much. I shared the link for the video. We shared the link for our communication. And actually, we shared the link for my personal page. So please follow us. And yeah, please share with your friends. I'd love everybody to follow us. That way we can produce as much free content and help as many people in as many locations as possible. Happy Saturday, Kelly Ellie. What a cool name. Thanks so much, Dave. I posted those links. Please share, and share some more. Machin, you have your interview day this week for a solution architect position. What are the leadership positions principally asked? Well,
I've got a video.
Matt Han, there's a video we produced specifically with regards to AWS interviews about 2 weeks ago on our YouTube channel. Chris from my team will post a link to that, and it will show you exactly how to tailor your things and things that you should say to AWS on a leadership principle. Guess what? That same video will work at almost any other cloud provider as well. So that interview is things that all employers care about, but I framed it in a way for AWS. So go out there and conquer that AWS interview. Wonderful. So happy you followed us. And follow Chris too, by all means. Chris is, half of this company. Wonderful, Kelly Oli. Which means my phone should have all kinds of things. Yep, it's already going cuckoo, and that's fine by me. I love that. Connect, follow. Let's build the best careers for everyone. Let's make it a life that you love, that you're happy with. Enjoy yourself. So, any last minute questions for me before I release everybody to enjoying the rest of the weekend? Okay, so remember, sign up for the free real-time architecture training next week. The link is in the description below. Sign up for the completely free interview training. The link is in the description below. Tom Chris just posted his LinkedIn page. Charles, all you have to do is click our website. Chris provided a 20% off coupon code for you to do that. And if you wanted a payment plan, you click where it says $9.99 and select 3 times $350. Thank you, Kelly Ellie, for Chris. Totally appreciate that. Okay, well, everyone, if you can type, actually, make sure you have the coupon code that Chris is typing. Chris can also pop you a link to the course if you desire, since he knows where that is, and we're going to give Chris a little bit of time to do it. Should you become a cloud architect? Only you can answer that question, entry level. If you want to be a cloud architect, then yes, you should become a cloud architect. It's a great career, but if you don't want to become a cloud architect, don't become a cloud architect, but only you know how you want to spend your future. And if you want to be a cloud architect, we'd love to train you, but you have to want it. It has to be important to you. So super important. Do what you love. Make your vacation your vocation, and you'll never work a day in your life. Ever since I left medicine and been in tech, I've been in tech for 25 years. I've never worked a minute of my life. I just got to talk about tech, write about tech, buy dinners and drinks and talk about tech, travel to talk about tech. I mean, it's been fun. I just get to talk and I get paid for it. And Abigail, yes, Cindy brought me home a few friends this morning. She went out this morning. She was sweet and loving when she went out, and she brought me home something, and it's not been pretty. Let's do this. Let's one last cloud architect and one last cloud hired, and let's celebrate the weekend. Go to the beach, like it looks Tom's doing. I'm in the Netherlands. I'm going to head to the beach. Well, not today. I'm headed to physical therapy to deal with my 5 herniated discs, 2 torn rotator cuffs, labral tears in the hip, and my RSD. But, other than that, I'd be at the beach, and I'm going to look at the beach on the way back from physical therapy, even if it's dark at night. So go out there and have a great time. Cloud architect, cloud hired, and let's have the best remaining of the weekend. Use these free things, and let's get cloud hired. Entry level. That's the key. Find out what you want, but I will tell you, there's no better job than the cloud architect job. And thank you, Perez. And yes, Abigail, we've got some really nice beaches here in Florida. Beautiful green water, some pretty dolphins, some pretty birds, some fish everywhere. Can't take my cat to the beach because I'm afraid what you do to the other animals, but it was really wonderful. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.